Chapter 547. Gong Jiu also told Lu Chengdi the truth so that he wouldn't have to take the blame if noble consort Su died. You have the ability to deliberately evade the responsibility, and now you're shirking the responsibility, you really are. Third Prince, Gong Jiu rudely interrupted him. This commoner is only a human, not a god. This commoner only knows a little more than the imperial physicians. If Third Prince still insists that this commoner didn't do his duty, then this commoner will be responsible for detoxifying noble consort Su. As for the rest, Third Prince can find whoever he thinks has the ability. Shameful thing, you really are. I want your life, someone come. This commoner is just a commoner. I am indebted to Jin Qin Wang Yi for thinking highly of me, so I became the physician of Jin Qin Wang Fu. In the end, it's just a lowly life. If Third Prince wants it, just take it. Gong Jiu was not afraid at all. Lu Chengdi only felt a sudden pain in his temples. Someone come, take Zhan away for Prince Rue. Without permission, no one is allowed to enter. But this address, he didn't know if it was a habit or if it had a special meaning. Li Hongming stiffly looked at Lu Chengdi. Zhan will not pursue the matter because you are worried about your mother. Lao San, so many things have happened, don't speak so casually until now. Li Hongming's lips trembled, his face dejected as he wiped his face. Fu Huang, this son was anxious and lost his sense of propriety. Just now, I was reckless. Dr. Gong, please don't bicker with me. Please take care of Mu Fei. Li Hongming glanced at noble consort Su who had already fallen into a coma. Perhaps it was useless for him to stand here and might even add to the chaos. After all, some thoughts were simply out of his control. Temporarily avoiding them might be the best policy. But those who were outstanding in certain aspects would always have some little eccentricities. Even Lu Chengdi's tolerance for these people was relatively high. Relatively speaking, Gong Jiu was just a little stubborn. Lu Chengdi naturally couldn't bear to part with such a talent. Perhaps Lu Chengdi wanted to express his trust in Gong Jiu, so he directly handed noble consort Su to him and said that as long as Gong Jiu tried his best, he wouldn't do anything even if noble consort Su died. He would deal with the aftermath himself. At the end of the day, Lu Chengdi was still selfish. Although imperial concubine Su had saved his life, it was still far from enough compared to him. After imperial concubine Su was grounded, more than half of the people who used to serve her in the palace were beaten to death. She lost her original lofty status, and it was impossible for the Ministry of Internal Affairs to replace her. Now that Emperor Lu Chengdi left with his people, the Jade Palace became lonely and desolate again. The people who served imperial concubine Su now were only a few palace maids and eunuchs, who were not alert and capable enough. Gong Jiu watched silently. He was about to stand up again, but no one took the initiative to curry favor. This was good too. Gong Jiu's treatment after that was very casual. To a large extent, it depended on imperial concubine Su's luck. It didn't matter if she could live. Imperial concubine Su's body had suffered quite a bit of damage and was rapidly deteriorating. This time, she had lost too much blood, and the effects were even more serious. Even if she could barely make it through, she would probably have to accompany the Empress. If she died directly, it might be too easy for her. Of course, Gong Jiu wouldn't go all out just because of this. Leaving the Jade Palace, Emperor Lu Chengdi's worry about imperial concubine Su weakened a little, and he paid more attention to tonight's matter. There were so many assassins in the palace, and he almost fell for it. How could he not be angry? Leading a large group of people, he angrily rushed to the imperial garden. The scene had already been cleaned up, but after knowing how many of his children and grandchildren had suffered, his eyes darkened and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, compared to heartache, Emperor Lu Chengdi was more angry. Where is Yu Zhongqing? Where did he die? Fu Huang, Commander Yu was seriously injured in the process of killing the assassins. He was also poisoned. Now, he won't make it. Emperor Lu Chengdi was startled. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. It was as if he had clearly forgotten everything that Yu Zhongqing had done, felt that he was too incompetent, and wanted to vent all his anger on him. Now that he knew that the other's life was in danger, he was like a deflated ball, remembering his loyal past. Immediately send him to the Jade Palace and let the doctor of Jin Qin Wang Fu take a look. Then Emperor Lu Chengdi seemed to have thought of something. What about you? Is there anyone injured or poisoned? Go to the Jade Palace together and see if it is the same poison. If it is, then cure it together. If there was a way to cure the poison, but they didn't have time to cure it and died, then it really was. And when Emperor Lu Chengdi learned that these adult sons of his, except for old Seven's arm, were all unharmed, his mood became a little subtle. What Qin Shu Fei saw, he naturally also saw some. As a father, as a husband, in a critical moment, he didn't protect his wife and children, but instead pushed them out. Those children who died, how many of them died because of their actions? People, to seek benefits and avoid harm, this seemed to be their nature. But to really do so, how selfish and cold was that? If it was him, the father, would they also do the same? When he thought of this possibility, Emperor Lu Chengdi's face turned completely black. Without saying anything, he scolded them to their faces. They were simply disloyal, unfilial, heartless and unrighteous scum. They didn't take responsibility at the critical moment. What was the use of having them? Each and every one of them was scolded silly, but no one dared to talk back, even if they didn't feel that they were in the wrong. The matter here quickly spread to the Sweet Dew Palace. Now, the people of the Sweet Dew Palace needed to grasp all the things that they could grasp. Jingwan felt that it was quite funny. Emperor Lu Chengdi and his sons were essentially jackals of the same tribe. He was the emperor and there were people who put his life first. Because there were people who blocked the knife, it was easy to stand and talk. If there was no Su Gue Fei to block the fatal wound for him in time, if there were only palace servants who were scared silly beside him, could he be 100% sure that he wouldn't push people to block the knife? In fact, it was 100% certain that he would. After the event, he might even confidently say that his life was so precious that they were all lowly people who deserved to die for him. On the contrary, it was because they didn't take the initiative to stand up to protect him that they deserved to die. So to put it bluntly, the fault of those princes was not that they pushed people to block the danger that belonged to them, but that they pushed the wrong person. This was the biggest difference brought about by the difference in status. If this kind of thing happened in her previous life, then even if you pushed a beggar, you would be condemned by everyone. The higher the status of the person who pushed people, the more criticism they would receive. But here, if you pushed 100 or 1,000 servants and you were the only one who was fine in the end, the world would take it for granted. Your own life was your own life. The lives of lowly people were like a blade of grass or a stone. Are you on? When are we leaving the palace? No matter when, it was really uncomfortable to stay in the palace. I'm afraid not for the time being. What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable? No, I'm just a little sleepy. Jingwan shook her head. Then go sleep in the side hall for a while. Tonight's matter won't be over so easily. You might not be able to sleep for the whole night. Qin Shufei said. Jingwan nodded. Thank you, Your Highness. She accepted Qin Shufei's kindness. Li Hongyuan followed her. The two hugged each other and slept in their clothes. Jingwan slept in Li Hongyuan's arms. Her breathing quickly became light and long. Li Hongyuan was originally a little worried that she would be frightened, but now he was relieved. Pulling the thin blanket on his body, Li Hongyuan also closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. His mind was thinking about tonight's matter. According to the current situation, he was slowly unraveling the situation bit by bit. Everything had a purpose. The bigger the matter, the stronger the purpose. According to Qin Shufei, it seemed to be to assassinate Lu Chengdi and the princes. The final result looked very tragic. Lu Chengdi was fine, and the princes were also fine. After killing so many people, it seemed to be purely killing people on sight. Those who ran fast were fine, and those who ran slow deserved it. It shouldn't be like this. Then looking at it from another point of view, whoever lost in this assassination would benefit. The matter was very clear. The only person who benefited was Imperial concubine Su. Although she saw that she had sacrificed herself, and it didn't seem like she was resting, the world didn't lack people who would gamble with their lives. If you want to achieve great things, you have to be more ruthless than others. When necessary, you have to be even more ruthless to yourself. Then the problem returned to the original point. According to Li Hongyuan's understanding, with the current power of the Su family and Li Hongming, they wouldn't be able to carry out tonight's assassination. It wasn't that they didn't have a way to get people into the palace, but that they didn't have such well-trained assassins. Even if they had the Minister of Personnel, Lord Su, whom Li Hongyuan didn't have any impression of in his previous life, secretly helping them, it was unlikely that they could achieve this step. Obviously, there were still things he didn't know. Regarding this, Li Hongyuan wasn't vexed. Although he had the ability of clairvoyance and held an advantage, the things he knew were limited after all. Moreover, due to the long period of time, it was normal for him to be negligent and forget. Thinking about it, Li Hongyuan entered a semi-hazy state until someone knocked on the door outside. Li Hongyuan opened his eyes. Wan, wake up. Now he was worried about leaving Jingwan here alone. What's wrong? Jingwan was still sleepy and in a daze. There should be something outside. I just remembered. After that, we'll go back to the prince's mansion to sleep. Oh. Jingwan obviously hadn't woken up yet and was a little dazed. Li Hongyuan asked someone to fetch warm water for her to wash up a little and wake up. When Sister He and Mammy Gong served Jingwan, Li Hongyuan learned about the situation from Eunuch Mu. Lu Chengdi mobilized all the men of the blackguard to replace the imperial guards, besieged the imperial kitchen and the musical house, and arrested and detained all the people inside. The imperial guards were also guarded. Then, a large-scale search was carried out, and those who were close to the assassins were basically unlucky. Later, during the search, they found many corpses. Only then did they realize that they were people who had been replaced by assassins. When they turned back to look at those assassins, it turned out that they were all in disguise. Their technique was actually not very good. As long as they got along with people for a long time, their acquaintances would be able to tell that something was wrong. Therefore, these people took advantage of the time and took advantage of the fact that people in several places were busy tonight to take advantage of the time. Where these people came from and how did they enter the palace? There was no way to find out. There were no suspicious places found at all the gates of the palace. Of course, if they said that they didn't find anything, they were shirking the responsibility. It was not the first time that something happened in the palace. The emperor's birthday the year before last was also left unsettled. Lu Chengdi didn't believe it. He gave Li Suyen a strict order to investigate to the end. If there was anything suspicious, they were all taken back to the prison of the blackguard for interrogation. In this way, when Lu Chengdi arrived at the Sweet Dew Palace, it was almost 4 hours later. As an emperor, he was suspicious by nature. Although he didn't suspect Li Hongyuan, Lu Chengdi still asked a few questions instinctively. Li Hongyuan's face was cold. He was very cooperative, but his expression was too sarcastic. The fact that Lu Chengdi could still stand properly was a testament to his tolerance. But now, he was being mocked by his son. No matter how high his tolerance was, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. Li Hongyuan didn't budge at all. In the end, Qin Shufei and Jingwan had to work together to stop the war between the father and son. In the end, get out of here. Lu Chengdi pointed outside. Li Hongyuan couldn't ask for more. He took Jingwan and quickly left. Seeing him so straightforward, Lu Chengdi's anger rose sharply. Previously, I said so much, but he didn't listen. Now, he seems very obedient. He was waiting for me here, right? Ah, this evil creature. Your Majesty, please calm down. Qin Shufei gently stroked his chest to help him calm down. It's not like Your Majesty doesn't know that His Highness has such a temper since he was young. He can't bear any grievances. Tonight, it was just a coincidence that the couple left the banquet. Your Majesty didn't suspect anything. But now that you asked, he's definitely unhappy. Moreover, His Highness seems to be angry with Your Majesty. This concubine doesn't know why, but with these two things added together, he's going all out against you. His Highness is a straightforward person. Everything is on the surface, but there's no twists and turns in his heart. After being comforted by Qin Shufei's soft words, Lu Chengdi's anger dissipated a lot. thinking about his evil creature son. Since he was young, when was he as obedient as his other sons? He was already used to it. If he suddenly became very obedient, he would be worried. So, in the end, he could only sigh helplessly. Qin Shufei didn't ask anything. She just waited on Lu Chengdi to sleep with the palace servants. After Lu Chengdi fell asleep, Qin Shufei dismissed the palace servants. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed and looked at Lu Chengdi. The other party was frowning. Obviously, he didn't sleep well. Qin Shufei's expression didn't change, but her eyes didn't have the previous warmth. She was still a peaceful and beautiful person, but with a bit of coldness. Qin Shufei sat for a while. She stood up and walked to the window. She looked up at the full moon in the sky. It should have been a family reunion and a day of celebration, but such a tragedy happened. She didn't know how many people died and how many were injured. She didn't even dare to ask. It should be the happiest time in an ordinary family. But in the imperial palace, the more it was like this, the more likely it was to cause all kinds of trouble. If it was light, there would be hidden mockery. If it was serious, there would be all kinds of framing. Moreover, because of this, the people with the most noble status were gathered together. So, Qin Shufei actually disliked all kinds of festivities. The more beautiful it was, the more tragic it would be after something happened. Because of his relationship with Gong Jiu, Li Hongyuan knew more than Lu Qingdi. Although Gong Jiu was still in the Jade Essence Palace, he always had a way to bring the news out. For example, after the detoxification, Yu Zhongqing didn't even frown when the wound extended from his shoulder blade to the back of his waist. Li Hongyuan looked at the 2-finger-wide note. The snake venom came from a special kind of poisonous snake in the territory of the former Wei. The former Wei. Li Hongyuan murmured these 2 words. This gave him a good direction. For Li Hongyuan, this was a good clue. However, when Lu Qingdi knew about this, Wei Xianfei would be in trouble. Even if she knew that this matter was unlikely to be her doing, Wei Xianfei was trapped in Qiyuan Imperial Palace, and the only people she could trust were the maids who had served her before. She was absolutely isolated from the outside world. However, who asked her to be the princess of the former Wei? Now that there was an assassination at the Mid-Autumn Festival, there were clues pointing to the former Wei. Therefore, when Wei Xianfei was bored and was dressing up in front of the mirror, Lu Chengdi angrily rushed in, grabbed Wei Xianfei, and slapped her. Wei Xianfei turned over and hit the dressing table. Coincidentally, the tip of a hairpin was pointed at her flesh, while the other side was against the makeup box. The tip of the hairpin pierced directly into her flesh. Wei Xianfei's originally delicate skin and tender flesh was so painful that her face almost twisted. However, after being in the imperial palace of Qi Yuan for almost 2 years, Wei Xianfei's pride was almost worn out. Therefore, even if she was angry, she didn't dare to show it. Your Majesty, what did I do wrong? Why are you so angry? She was very pitiful. The poison on the weapon of the assassin last night came from the former Wei. What do you want to say? Lu Chengdi grabbed her neck and asked gloomily. Wei Xianfei was alarmed. Your Majesty, this concubine doesn't know. I really don't know. Ever since I entered Qi Yuan Imperial Palace and became Your Majesty's concubine, everything about this concubine is under Your Majesty's eyes. How could I do anything? Moreover, since this concubine is Your Majesty's concubine, then even if Qi Yuan and the former Wei had a war, this concubine would definitely stand on Qi Yuan's side. Your Majesty, you have to believe this concubine, Your Majesty. Lu Chengdi's face was still gloomy and cold. At this moment, the little prince in the cradle suddenly cried. Lu Chengdi was startled, and his hand unconsciously loosened a little. Wei Xianfei's eyes flashed, and she saw the hope of escaping this disaster. Emperor, for the sake of our child, can you believe this concubine? This matter really has nothing to do with me. I'm your woman when I'm alive and my soul belongs to the Qi Yuan when I die. I will never be disloyal. Lu Chengdi glanced at the cradle. It was his youngest son. His heart was moved and he threw Wei Xianfei away. This matter had better have nothing to do with you. Otherwise, when I find out, I'll skin you alive. Humph. Wei Xianfei fell to the ground and didn't get up for a long time. At that time, she refused to go to the Xiongnu for peace and stayed in the Qiyuan. She thought that at least there was a life of luxury here. Look, this was her life of luxury. She was clearly the legitimate princess of the Wei dynasty. She grew up being pampered. If she stayed in the Wei dynasty and got a husband, she would still be surrounded by attendants. The palace servant stood at the door with a cold expression, as if he didn't see Wei Xianfei's embarrassment. This was the current situation of the Yi Palace. It was also the coldest and most ruthless reality. There was no support, no favor, and anyone could step on her head. Wei Xianfei had been angry before, but she was only ridiculed in return. The appearance of an assassin at the Mid-Autumn Festival was a big matter. It wouldn't be hidden, and it couldn't be hidden. Those who were well informed got the news last night. Today almost everyone knew. The first reaction of the officials was to wonder who was so audacious. Some people might whisper that imperial concubine Su was lucky. She happened to come across the merit of saving the emperor and was able to turn the situation around. More people thought that it was a conspiracy theory. The simplest way of thinking was that whoever benefited was the mastermind. However, this kind of thing couldn't be said easily. There was no evidence, and it might anger the emperor. Therefore, the key now was to find out the truth of this matter. It was best for those who had nothing to do with it to be a bystander and not to interfere. Of course, this was only on the surface. There were a lot of things to do in the dark. The most basic point was to use all the channels that one could get information to understand the matter in detail as much as possible. This was to prevent other things from happening. When they were caught off guard, if something fell on their head, it would be even more unjust. Following a master like Jin Qin Wang, there were many more benefits. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/147431010. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 548. As for what happened at the Mid-Autumn Festival Palace Banquet, only a small number of people were affected. The others continued to live their lives as usual. It was just one more topic to talk about. After all, it involved the royal family, and more than one member of the royal family had died. When discussing this matter, it was relatively obscure. With just a few words, it didn't stir up as much waves as most of the gossip. Of course, it looked calm on the surface, but if this matter was related to some official, then there would be a bloody storm after the investigation. At that time, the panic would spread over the capital for at least 3 months. Not many people would be able to ignore the matter as if it had nothing to do with them like it did now. Well, the premise was that it could be investigated. What if it couldn't be investigated? The matter was done so meticulously. Whether the assassin completed the task or not, he would die. Therefore, it was more likely that it couldn't be investigated. However, there were no absolutes in the world. There might be a twist at any time. In the palace, imperial concubine Su was tenacious. Gong Jiu only treated her according to the usual methods and didn't do his best. She survived. Perhaps there was too much hatred and unwillingness in her heart. Her desire to live was too strong. On the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, the former Princess Rue, Lady Lu, also followed into the palace. She brought her 3 daughters with her. Princess Haong found her grandson. Although all the trouble was caused by the father of the baby girl in her hands, the child was innocent. Princess Haong wasn't a psychopath. She returned the child safe and sound. Now, Lady Lu kept a close watch on the 3 children. At home, no matter how angry Li Hongming was at her, she was indifferent. To put it bluntly, she was a typical case of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. However, if Li Hongming tried to touch her children, just wanted to get close to them, Lady Lu would go crazy in seconds. She would fight with Li Hongming like a mad dog. Having seen this more than once, Li Hongming's face was so dark that ink could drip out. However, he had no power and influence. Lady Lu's father was still an elder of the inner pavilion. He still wanted to rise up and he still wanted the Lu family's help. Therefore, he couldn't do anything to Lady Lu. However, Li Hongming had never been a magnanimous person. If he really ascended the throne, Lady Lu would definitely not have a good end. Lady Lu took care of noble consort Su. If it was in the past, she would probably do it herself. But now, she just sat there like a wooden stake. She didn't even move her mouth, let alone move her hands. Not to mention that the Jade Essence Palace was fully staffed now and the rewards from Emperor Lu Cheng were flowing like water. Even if it was just a miserable situation before, Lady Lu wouldn't help. It was almost time, so she went to see the children. Although noble consort Su was injured and not sick, and Lady Lu rarely let the children appear in front of noble consort Su, when the children were around, Lady Lu was obviously much gentler and angry. Noble consort Su was so angry that her heart, liver, and lungs hurt. However, being angry could only increase the burden on her body. She could only suppress her anger. She used to be satisfied with Lady Lu, but now she was as dissatisfied with Lady Lu as she was with Jingwan. However, Lady Lu was stubborn now. Similarly, if anyone dared to use her children, she would still dare to make a scene in the palace. Therefore, in the end, noble consort Su could only be like Li Hongming. Lady Lu saw this and sneered in her heart. In the past, she was too stupid and had too many misgivings. That was why she was tightly controlled in the palm of their hands. Now, even if she knew that she might be at the end of the road, she didn't care. First, she would let herself be happy. When the time came, she would just take the 3 children with her. In any case, if she died, the 3 children definitely wouldn't have a good life. Although she was reluctant, she had no other choice because Lady Lu was very clear that even if she lowered herself like before, she wouldn't have a good life in the future. Besides, Lady Lu felt that she might not be at the end of the road. As long as Li Hongming couldn't sit on the throne, the 4 of them still had a good chance of survival. The new emperor would deal with Li Hongming and wouldn't touch them. Firstly, it would show the new emperor's benevolence. Secondly, her 3 children were all girls and wouldn't pose a threat to the new emperor. On the surface, Lady Lu tried her best to set up a protective wall for the children, but in her heart, she kept thinking about how to find a way out for them. It would be great if she could gain the favor of the new emperor first and get a protective talisman for them. That's right. Now, as long as she could exchange the safety of the 4 of them, Lady Lu wouldn't hesitate to betray Li Hongming. Unfortunately, she counted her fingers and thought over and over again, but she didn't think that any of them had a high chance of becoming the emperor. The emperor clearly had so many sons, and it seemed that they all had some ability, but they weren't outstanding. She used to think highly of Li Hongming, but he failed miserably time and time again. He was the first to fall. It was obvious that he was useless. It was this kind of situation that was the most difficult to bet on. However, this kind of thing was different from other things. She couldn't cast the net too widely. Otherwise, if she was careless, she could lose her life in advance. If Li Hongming found out, he could kill her directly without caring about anything else. Princess Lu looked more and more like a lifeless wooden stake, but she was very anxious in her heart. Li Hongming had been restored to the title of prince, but he hadn't arranged any work for the time being. Lady Lu had also been restored to the status of princess. Prince Rui's mansion had also been restored to its original size, and the necessary things had been moved in. However, Princess Lu accidentally found one thing. Now Prince Rui's attitude towards concubine Su seemed to be a bit strange. He was concerned about her, but there seemed to be something else. Princess Lu quietly observed and thought carefully. Finally, she understood the key of the problem. Our Prince Rui still resented his biological mother. He resented her for not dying directly. Thinking about it, if concubine Su died directly, then all the credit of saving the emperor would be compensated for Li Hongming. If she died directly, Lu Chengdi's feelings for her would be even deeper. Every time concubine Su was mentioned intentionally or unintentionally, Lu Chengdi would think that concubine Su exchanged her life for his. Whether it was out of guilt or out of kindness, Li Hongming would inevitably benefit, just like Li Hongyuan. If she died, Li Hongming could immediately return to the imperial court, instead of taking care of the sick in the Jade Essence Palace. When a prince's mother died, he didn't have to worry about his mother. He was in a hurry now. If concubine Su was in her previous state, she would be of great help to Li Hongming. Li Hongming wouldn't be like this. The problem was that concubine Su's current state could be seen by anyone with discerning eyes. After she recovered, she would be equal to a disabled person. Therefore, it was not as valuable as dying directly. Princess Lu sneered in her heart. No matter how Li Hongming behaved on the surface, he was cold-blooded and selfish in nature. He put his own interests first. She wondered what concubine Su would think if she knew it. Would she be sad and disappointed, or would she be gratified and kill herself to help him? After all, this son was taught by her hand. Unfortunately, concubine Su was asleep when Li Hongming showed this trace on his face. Otherwise, with her keen senses, how could she not notice her son's abnormality? Princess Lu wanted to watch a show. She hoped that a good mother-in-law would find out or a man would say it directly. At that time, it would definitely be a good show. However, the chance to see it live was not big. Li Hongming and concubine Su were not stupid. It was impossible for them to expose this in front of a third person. The court was not calm. The adult princes were fighting openly and secretly. This time, their attitude was surprisingly consistent. They tried to pin the mastermind on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan was still the same as before, but his incomparable position in Lu Chengdi's heart was the biggest threat. This kind of inference without evidence was naturally untenable. What was more, Li Hongyuan had already expressed his attitude in front of Lu Chengdi. Li Hongyuan made it clear to Lu Chengdi that he didn't care if Lu Chengdi suspected him or stripped him of his title. He didn't have time to explain or pay attention to anyone. However, Lu Chengdi fell for this trick. It was said that once a person's heart was biased, he would see everything with a filter. Li Hongyuan grew up as a scoundrel. In Lu Chengdi's eyes, he was a straightforward and well-behaved child. Once the first impression was the strongest, Lu Chengdi would definitely be unhappy when other princes slandered Li Hongyuan. Not to mention, on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Lu Chengdi was quite disappointed with their performance. So, they didn't dare to pretend to be pitiful by losing a child to gain sympathy. If they really dared to do so, Li Hongyuan wouldn't do anything to them, but they would suffer. In the end, those who still wanted to put the blame on Li Hongyuan were stopped by Lu Chengdi's unfilial and unfilial. They didn't dare to say more. Originally, many people were worried about Li Hongyuan. However, he didn't do anything, and Lu Chengdi had full power to uphold justice for him. Well, they were worried for nothing. The power of bias was really extraordinary. As for those who didn't like Li Hongyuan, they could only stomp their feet in anger once again. Jin Qinhuang's position in the emperor's heart is unshakable. Even if it is shaken, those who want to kill him will be consigned to eternal damnation even faster. Rather than saying that the emperor is biased towards Jin Qinhuang, it's better to say that the emperor is protecting the other princes to a certain extent. Now, it's just that the emperor is still holding up, and Jin Qinhuang is too lazy to move. If the estimation is correct, Jin Qinhuang's wings are full, his claws and teeth are sharp, and he can brazenly attack at any time. For some things, as long as you pull out a thread, you can pull out a longer thread. Although it was just the tip of the iceberg, it was enough to frighten people. To deal with a person like Jin Qinhuang, one couldn't act blindly without thinking. If one moved, one must hit with one blow. Otherwise, one could be gnawed until not even bones were left. Therefore, one must be patient, cautious, and thorough. Sun Yilin spent the Mid-Autumn Festival with the Luo family in the Luo family. It could be considered as experiencing the happy atmosphere of family harmony. However, that kind of happy mood couldn't be maintained for too long. Because, after all, the Luo family wasn't his home. Tidying up the few things he He prepared to leave the capital. Just at this time, someone came to the Luo family's door. Moreover, it was a girl, and she specifically asked to see Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin was originally playing chess with Luo Jinghua, and Sun Yijia was watching from the side. Hearing the news from the door guard, Sun Yijia looked at her elder brother with astonishment and ridicule. Her fifth brother owed a romantic debt outside. This was really too rare. Sun Yilin's brows wrinkled. Sun Yijia looked, afraid that it wasn't something pleasant. She originally wanted to open her mouth and tease him a bit, but now, fifth brother, why don't I have someone send her away? A girl who wasn't related to him came to look for a man. It was very easy for them to never see such a person again, let alone send her away. Sun Yilin looked at Sun Yijia with a little astonishment and disapproval. Little sister, she's just a girl. It was easy to send her away, but even easier to destroy her. How could you be so cruel? Sun Yijia was speechless. Didn't I do it for you? I thought that someone was pestering you. It turns out that my good intentions were treated as ill intent. Her brother's temperament looked gentle, but he was actually very cold, especially towards insignificant people. Now that he had changed so much, he was no longer gentle even on the surface. Could it be that he was gentle in his bones now? Sun Yilin rubbed between his eyebrows helplessly. These days, the siblings had spent more time together, and Sun Yilin's emotions had finally eased. He was no longer as stiff and emotionless as before. However, this was the first time that his emotions were so obvious. Sun Yijia was really curious now. Bring her in. The other party had never been to the capital before and was unfamiliar with this place. They couldn't just ignore her. She was quickly brought in. When they were still a distance away, Sun Yijia could feel her joy from her gait. However, when she got closer and saw her brother's expressionless face, she immediately became cautious and nervous, as if she was afraid that she would upset her brother. This girl wasn't very beautiful. Her face was a little round, but she looked quite likable. She had a good upbringing. Sun Yijia guessed that she might be from a big family. Her eyes were very clean. It could be seen that either she was open-minded and didn't like to be calculative, or her living environment was relatively simple. If she was really from a big family, she would belong to the former. Also, her eyes obviously showed that she liked her brother very much. It was very pure, and she didn't seem to be affected by her brother's current appearance. Sun Yijia's heart skipped a beat. Yilin. Min Xiaoyuan, Sun Yilin interrupted her. You only brought a servant girl and a nanny. How dare you come all the way to the capital? Do you know what you are doing? You are a girl. What if you are in danger? His tone was unspeakably strict. Naturally, there was also concern that he didn't notice. Sun Yijia saw this and some thoughts in her heart became more and more obvious. Min Xiaoyuan lowered her head and unconsciously tugged at her handkerchief. Then, she lifted her eyes and carefully looked at Sun Yilin. I also brought my brother's attendant and a coachman. She said softly. Sun Yilin choked. Obviously, his heart was blocked. His eyes turned and it looked like he was about to roll his eyes. Sun Yijia snorted and laughed out loud. She hurriedly covered her mouth with her handkerchief and then acted as if nothing had happened. She didn't do anything. Please ignore her. You can continue. Luo Jinghua was also drinking tea at this time. The husband and wife had a tacit understanding. Their eyes met through the edge of the quilt and they smiled tacitly. But, surnamed Min? Was she a girl from the Min family? Sun Yilin glanced at them and didn't say anything. Is this the main point? Min Xiaoyuan also looked at Sun Yilin and Luo Jinghua. If she guessed correctly, they should be Sun Yilin's younger sister and brother-in-law. She had already asked around about Sun Yilin. But if he didn't introduce her, she couldn't just run up to them. Moreover, her main point now was to make Sun Yilin let her stay. Then what's the main point? Didn't you say that I didn't bring enough people? Min Xiaoyuan revealed a sense of naivety and doubt. Sun Yilin was a little discouraged. Obviously, this wasn't the first time this happened. You shouldn't have come to the capital. When Min Xiaoyuan heard this, the rims of her eyes became a little red. Her hand that was tugging at her handkerchief was a little pale. Sun Yilan reflected on himself if he was too straightforward. However, there were some things that he couldn't do and couldn't promise, so he shouldn't drag it out. However, this girl seemed to have a one-track mind. It wasn't the first time he had rejected her so straightforwardly, but he didn't see any signs of her backing down. Miss Min, chasing after a man without telling your family is not something a lady from a respectable family should do. Not only will your family be worried, but if others find out, not only you, but your parents and elders will also be pointed at. Your sister's reputation will also be tarnished because of your actions. Whether you're selfish or willful, you shouldn't. Young Master Sun. The old servant behind Min Xiaoyuan finally couldn't listen to it anymore. Sun Yilan glanced at her coldly and continued to speak, ignoring Min Xiaoyuan's pitter-patter of tears. I've told you long ago that it's impossible between us. Not to mention that I'm all alone now with no official position, title, or property. How can I afford to raise a pampered girl like you? Even I have never thought of marrying. So, go back to where you came from. Don't cause trouble for others, do you understand? This was the first time Sun Yijia heard her elder brother speak so bluntly. It was too much to say this to a girl. Moreover, this girl didn't seem to be thick-skinned. The fact that she followed him to the capital was probably the most outrageous thing she could do. Even if she wanted to reject him, she should at least be more tactful. Fifth brother. Little sister, this is my business. Don't butt in. Just mind your own business. Sun Yilan tilted his head and said coldly. Sun Yijia was obviously angered by him this time. She put down the cup in her hand on the table. Fine, I don't care. Do whatever you want. This time, Luo Jinghua had a headache. Pregnant women had a strange temper. It was fine if his wife wasn't angry, but once she got angry, he might not be able to coax her back even if he tried his best. Brother-in-law, you shouldn't trick me like this. Min Xiaoyuan wiped her tears. I've disturbed you today, young master. I'll leave now. As she spoke, she left directly. She was very straightforward, but her whole person exuded a sense of stubbornness. Young miss. Min Xiaoyuan's servant called out worriedly. Let's go. Why are you staying here? You'll be annoying. Min Xiaoyuan quickened her steps. Min Xiaoyuan's behavior was surprising. She chased after him from so far away, but she gave up so easily. Only Sun Yilan felt his head hurt even more. Little sister, send someone to find out where they're staying. They're new to the capital and will be easily bullied. Fifth brother, didn't you tell me to stay out of your business? Why are you looking for me? Sun Yijia said coldly. Little sister. Sun Yilan said helplessly, this girl was born in the Min family. Her grandfather and the head of the Min family are cousins. Their family is doing well. She's the daughter of the main wife, so she should have a good marriage of equal status. She shouldn't be involved with me. I don't know my future, and I don't want to get married. Don't you understand? Fifth brother, when did you meet her? 2 years ago. Although Sun Yilan didn't know why, he still answered truthfully. Do you know how old she is now? Sun Yilan's face stiffened. 18. Sun Yijia sneered. Obviously, you've already delayed her. We're all from aristocratic families. You know very well what aristocratic families are like. When you met her, she was already 16. What do you think the chances of her not being engaged are? The fact that she's still with you now means that her marriage is obviously over. Not many men in aristocratic families can decide their own marriages, let alone a girl. It takes a lot of courage and determination to fight against her own marriage. If she doesn't do well, her family would rather kill her. The fact that she's still standing in front of you, other than the fact that her parents should be kind and doting on her, she's definitely sacrificed a lot herself. However, she's still full of vitality, which means that she has no regrets about her sacrifice. She may be rebellious, but she dares to pursue her goals. Even if you reject her, at least you shouldn't use words to hurt her. Everyone can criticize her, But you can't. Furthermore, if a pampered girl were to meet a man who had lost her heart outside, how could her family turn a blind eye to that man? But why do I feel that you haven't interacted with her family? This means that Miss Min stopped her family from looking for you to avoid causing trouble for you. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/147905568. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. Please wait patiently after reporting and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website: beacon.com. Chapter 549. Sun Yilin rubbed his aching temples. He didn't know about these things, but it was indeed very likely to have happened. It was indeed extraordinary for a girl from an aristocratic family to be able to express her admiration, and it required great courage. When he was in the capital, there were many girls who liked him. Their expressions were all obscure and reserved, and they were always full of tricks to please him. However, sometimes they were nondescript and annoying, and some of them were as clingy as Li Ruyu. Although Min Xiaoyuan ran to the capital with him, in fact, he didn't meet Min Xiaoyuan many times. She didn't give people the impression that she was clingy. Even if she knew what he liked, she wouldn't pretend to know if she didn't know. Instead, she would share some interesting things with him. Sun Yilin had to admit that every time he met her, although the time was short, it was actually pleasant. After returning to the capital, it wasn't that he never went out. Thanks to his brother, his current image was very recognizable. Occasionally, he would meet girls who used to admire him, and their eyes would be filled with obvious disgust. Also, because he was no longer a member of Ding General Manor, they would deliberately mock and ridicule him with the people around him, as if the fact that they used to like him was a lifelong shame. Of course, he happened to meet such a reaction, but it didn't mean that all girls were like this. From this point of view, Sun Yilin was actually quite unlucky. Min Xiaoyuan wasn't like that. When they first met, she didn't know his identity. Later on, she didn't change at all. In order to reject her, he told her clearly after he was adopted. Min Xiaoyuan said, "I like you, not your family background. It doesn't matter if you are the son of Duke Ding's mansion or not." And when she knew that he had an accident, she rushed over immediately. She didn't dislike him, but only felt distressed. He didn't care about himself or his health, but she was worried and sad. Sun Yilin had a good impression of Min Xiaoyuan, but to him, this was all he could do. He couldn't go any further. Sun Yilin also knew that Min Xiaoyuan was a good girl. If she hadn't met him, she might have married the husband her parents chose for her step by step and had children. She might not have a vigorous life, but she might have a plain happiness. Because he had met her, his life might have changed beyond recognition. Sun Yilin had never thought of accepting Min Xiaoyuan, so his attitude had always been very clear. However, this girl was also very stubborn. She had a feeling of, "It's your business if you don't accept me, but it's my business if I like you." After all, she was a girl. He couldn't be rough with her, right? Moreover, she also abided by etiquette and rules and would not go overboard. Therefore, Sun Yilin had no choice but to let her be and never pay attention to her matters. But now, some things had been clearly pointed out by his little sister. Originally, he hadn't forced Min Xiaoyuan to do this, so he couldn't be blamed for ignoring it. However, it was obvious that he couldn't be indifferent. Sun Yilin was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Many people revolved around him. No matter what others did, he didn't feel anything. The only thing he felt guilty about was probably his own mother. Duchess Ding fell ill at the beginning because of him. However, because the relationship between mother and son was too stiff at that time, he only wanted to stay away from that family. The guilt was suppressed in the bottom of his heart. When his mother passed away, he didn't get to see her for the last time. The emotions that were suppressed in the bottom of his heart finally burst out. But in essence, Sun Yilin still didn't regret it. Now, there seemed to be one more person who made him feel guilty. What kind of Sun Yijia did Sun Yilin want to see the most? Of course, he wanted to let go of Sister Wan, marry a lovely wife, and give birth to a lovely child. Not to mention wealth and glory, at least he would be happy and healthy. He couldn't let go of Jingwan's first awakening of love. Other women, no matter if they were good-looking or talented, couldn't move him at all. Even if they did something stupid for him, he might even ridicule them in his heart. Now, Min Xiaoyuan appeared, at least it made him hesitate. Sun Yijia felt that there was hope, so she was willing to help him at an appropriate time. More importantly, it could only depend on their fate and luck. This time, I'll take her with me when I leave the capital. I'll send her home directly and explain it to her family in person. I'm sure that after understanding my situation, her family will definitely be reluctant to let her suffer with me. Sun Yijia's anger, which had calmed down, flared up again because of Sun Yilin's words. At this moment, she didn't say anything and directly left. She could do whatever she wanted. She really didn't care. Brother-in-law, why do you have to do this? Luo Jingbua was helpless. Think about it carefully. I'll go and see Yijia. He patted Sun Yilin's shoulder and chased after Sun Yijia. Luo Jingbua was now in the Hanlin Academy. There weren't many things to do, but there were many people who came to curry favor with him. Even when they met Mu Xiu, they couldn't stop. He felt that it was quite hard for him. Luo Jingbua saw Sun Yijia sulking and pulling the leaves of the flowers. Don't pull, don't pull. Be careful not to prick your hand. The flowers had thorns. You men are all bad, Sun Yijia said angrily. Luo Jingbua was dumbfounded. What was this about? Besides, his brother-in-law was doing it for the good of Miss Min. How did he become a bad person? What do you mean? Please enlighten me. You probably still think that fifth brother is doing it for the good of Miss Min, right? Sun Yijia's voice was cold. Has he ever considered Miss Min's feelings? When Princess Kong was still alive, my father, mother, and the Empress betrothed me to Prince Kong. They also said that it was for my good. Was it for my good? Miss Min obviously wants to hang herself on him. He sent her back and wanted her to marry someone else. Was it for her good? Was it for her good? It turned out that she was angry because she thought of what had happened to her in the past. Yijia, you can't generalize everything. Your situation was different from Miss Min's at that time. You got together for the benefit of both parties. Miss Min obviously has good parents, although it's possible that her parents didn't know what to do with her and simply left her alone. Brother-in-law didn't want Miss Min to suffer with him. Besides, brother-in-law has a knot in his heart. Although Sun Yilin did not show it, they actually felt it. If he had really let go, it was still okay to casually ask about the situation of the person he used to like. But because he did not mention a word, it was as if he did not know such a person. So, it was obvious that he still remembered, and it might even evolve into an obsession. Sun Yijia also knew that she was being a little paranoid. However, her heart ached and she was anxious. It was true that he had a knot in his heart. However, it was pure nonsense to say that he did not want Miss Min to suffer because Sun Yijia believed that as long as her elder brother was willing, he could still have enough wealth on his own. Don't worry. Brother-in-law is a man after all. He knows what he is doing. Besides, it's hard to say when it comes to love. Maybe he will get over it and think it through. Then, he can be with Miss Min, wouldn't that be better? Miss Min is already 18 years old. How can she delay it any longer? To others, she is already an old woman. They will definitely pick and choose her. Miss Min is also unwilling. When brother-in-law really thinks it through, he probably won't care about Miss Min's age. What if he can't think it through? What if he refuses to marry her? What if Miss Min insists on waiting for him? Won't it really ruin Miss Min's life? It's fine if her brothers are willing to support her. But what if they are not willing? She will be a Buddhist monk? Or they will simply force her to marry someone. At her age, she can't be the first wife, second wife, or concubine. She will be despised and controlled by others. What if she is more stubborn and hits the wall? Luo Jinghua looked at his wife, who was getting more and more agitated. Her thoughts were really far off. Ija, take it easy. Take it easy. You can't think of the worst, can you? In any case, Sun Ija felt indignant. Miss Min is not the only one in this situation. I don't see you like this with other people. Other people? Do they have anything to do with me? Do they have anything to do with fifth brother? This reason was very strong and he was speechless. His wife was really becoming more and more upright. She was becoming more and more intimate and reasonable. She used to be such an arrogant person and the model of a noble lady. Now, the shadow of this noble lady was fading. In a few more years, who knew what she would become? However, this was also very good, wasn't it? Min Xiaoyuan, who had left the Luo family, originally wanted to shamelessly stay at Sun Yilan's place. However, she was not thick-skinned enough. Now, she was a little annoyed. Why did she run away after being provoked by him? Wasn't he just trying to drive her away? He let her have her way so easily. It was even more inappropriate for her to go back now. However, it was her first time in the capital, so she naturally had to take a good look around. At least, she could barely comfort herself that she was disappointed and pleased at the same time. Min Xiaoyuan didn't bring many people, but she still had enough money. After all, she was the daughter of a noble family. Due to her habit, she naturally wouldn't go to places where ordinary people frequented. This woman's exuberant desire to shop existed in every era, and Min Xiaoyuan was one of them. Coincidentally, Jingwan was also shopping these days. She was purely out for a walk, not to buy anything. Of course, if she saw something that interested her, she would buy it. The carriage followed behind her, and if she was tired, she would sit in the carriage for a while. Because she didn't want to disturb the people, she used a normal carriage. The curtains on both sides of the carriage were hung up. She sat in the carriage with Li Hongyuan and talked about the more interesting people and things along the way. Miss Min. Ah Yuan, is that Miss Min? The one who was with Pei Xiuying in Jiangnan? Li Hongyuan looked in the direction Jingwan pointed at and narrowed his eyes slightly. Probably. Li Hongyuan's people had almost finished investigating Sun Yilan's incident in Jiangnan. Of course, he knew about Min Xiaoyuan. However, Li Hongyuan didn't find out what he really wanted to know. Sun Yilan was injured in a big fire, but that was before he returned to the capital. It wasn't the reason for his change in temperament at all. Some of his previous experiences seemed to be relatively normal. This result was not what Li Hongyuan wanted, but it was within his expectations. Even people who were watched day and night would have things that others didn't know, let alone investigate a person's experience in the past 2 to 3 years when no one was watching. There were only a few thin pages in the message, but if the experience of 2 to 3 years was written down in great detail, it could probably be written into a magnificent masterpiece. A few pages and a book thicker than a brick. Any difference between a few pages and a book that was thicker than a brick could be the reason for the unforeseen event. It didn't matter if they couldn't find out. Sun Yilan would be watched in the future. Send someone to take a look. Is it her? Because of the close relationship between Madame Min and Madame Pei, although there were still many officials, they were still restricted. There were no members of the Min family in the capital. Min Xiaoyuan was still dressed as a girl, which obviously ruled out the possibility of her coming to the capital with her husband. Therefore, Min Xiaoyuan's appearance in the capital was a little strange. As for Madame Min now, she wanted to walk out of Madame Pei's influence and return to the imperial court, so she sent someone to the capital to mediate. However, Madame Min had already submitted to Li Hongyuan and was Li Hongyuan's spy in Jiangnan. When Li Hongyuan ascended the throne, they would naturally have the opportunity to enter the imperial court. Although she didn't hear what the servant said, she brought the person over. It was obviously the person she knew. Jingwan got off the carriage. Min Xiaoyuan was also quite surprised to see Jingwan. The last time they met was more than 2 years ago. At that time, she was 15 and the other was 16. Compared to now, there was a big change. Jingwan's eyesight was very good to be able to recognize her by accident. To be honest, Jingwan only knew that her surname was Min and didn't remember her name. "Greetings, Your Highness." "No need to be so polite. Miss Min, did you come to the capital with your elders to play?" Jingwan smiled. Min Xiaoyuan was a little embarrassed. She really couldn't say that she ran thousands of miles with a man. If she didn't do it well, she would be mistaken as eloping. Although she was going all out for Sun Yilin, and some people thought that she had lost face when she did this, but in this unfamiliar place, she still wanted to save some face for herself. Even if it wasn't for herself, it was for Sun Yilin. She also knew about Sun Yilin's current situation. She had been in the capital for 3 days, and she had been understanding Sun Yilin's situation. If there was another elopement, it would only make the other party's situation worse. "No, there's something," Min Xiaoyuan said vaguely. Jingwan nodded understandingly and didn't ask any more questions. Then, they chatted casually for a while. Jingwan asked about Min Yuhan's recent situation. She found out that Min Yuhan was doing well. Jingwan actually felt a little regretful. For the imperial noble consort, she might be more willing to see Min Yuhan than Lu Qingdi. Of course, there were some situations where it was better not to see each other. It had been 20 or 30 years, and they had almost forgotten each other. Suddenly seeing each other again might be tearing open the wounds of the past. They weren't very familiar with each other, so they quickly parted ways. Jingwan looked at Min Xiaoyuan's back as she walked away. "She's 18 and still not married? I don't see any traces of mourning on her body. Does she have a hidden illness? Or did something happen? Wan, are you that curious? If you want to know, you can get someone to investigate. Even if you're curious, you don't have to know. This is her private matter." Jingwan waved her hand and walked into a nearby shop. As a result, Jingwan missed the opportunity to know something. Min Xiaoyuan was in a good mood. Meeting someone she knew in an unfamiliar place was a bit like meeting an old friend in a foreign land. The bad mood caused by Sun Yilin's attack was a lot better. Hence, Min Xiaoyuan started to shop. She accidentally bought too much and forgot that she wasn't in Jiangnan. She couldn't carry the things and was a little embarrassed. "Mama, why didn't you remind me? I saw that you were happy. Besides, it's not much. You don't have to worry about it. I don't want to buy any more. Let's go back." Min Xiaoyuan reached out to take something, wanting to share the burden. "Miss, this is not something you should take. I've told you many times. You obviously can't take it anymore. It doesn't matter if I take something less expensive. Give it to me. It's okay." Min Xiaoyuan thought of something and a blush appeared on her face. She lowered her volume. "Yilin's situation isn't very good now. When I get married to him in the future, I can't always be surrounded by people. I'll just take it as familiarizing myself with him. When the time comes, it might be just me and him shopping together." She felt happy just thinking about that scene. The mama sighed. Silly girl. Nothing was set in stone yet and she was thinking so far ahead. With Sun Yilin's attitude, even if he persevered, who knew how long it would take? However, when she thought of what her miss had done for Sun Yilin, she couldn't bear to pour cold water on her. She was really afraid that she wouldn't get what she wanted in the end and what would become of her. His anger towards Sun Yilin was equal to how much his heart ached for his Mississippi. Sun Yilin was already in his current state, yet his miss still didn't change her heart. It was already his great fortune that his miss still dared to speak ill of his Mississippi. Even if he knew his true motive, it was still unforgivable. In fact, if Sun Yilin readily accepted it now, this nanny would definitely be unhappy. Her miss likes you. Who are you to deserve it? Speak. Did you seduce my miss? You're asking for a beating. What, you say you don't like my miss? Bastard, my miss is loved by everyone. How dare you not like my miss? You're asking for a beating. The mood of protecting the calf, was so subtle. The people sent by Sun Yijia followed Min Xiaoyuan all the way. When they returned, they reported to Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia was too lazy to listen and directly sent them to Sun Yilin. No matter how much she cared, it was useless, so why bother? Sun Yilin listened patiently and carefully. Only when he heard that Min Xiaoyuan had interacted with Jing Wan, his expression changed slightly. In fact, Sun Yilin had heard Min Xiaoyuan say that she had interacted with Jin Qin Wang Fei before. This was also a kind of fate. Sun Yilin didn't have any opinion about Min Xiaoyuan buying some unrealistic things. He might be short on money now, but he didn't put money in his eyes. When he was rich, he spent more. When he was poor, he spent less. It was just that. He wouldn't think that other people shouldn't spend money recklessly because of his own conditions. Only at the end, when he heard that Min Xiaoyuan and the others had gone to the medicine shop, his brows slightly furrowed. Go and ask, who among them is sick? He suddenly felt a little worried because when he thought about the time Min Xiaoyuan entered the capital, it seemed that it was much later than him. The servant girl who went to ask was also astute. She didn't look for Min Xiaoyuan, but the people around her. After all, if that Miss Min was sick, then for some reason, she might not tell the truth, but the people around her were different. The person who was sick was indeed Min Xiaoyuan. She fell sick on the way to the capital, vomiting and having diarrhea. They were originally rushing, but in the end, they were delayed for more than 10 days. On the third day, it was the most serious and she almost lost her life. Until now, she still hadn't recovered. The reason why they traveled while sick was to see Sun Yilin earlier. Sun Yilin couldn't stay any longer and directly went to the inn where they were staying. Min Xiaoyuan was bored to death and was thinking about what excuse to use to see Sun Yilin again. In the end, Sun Yilin himself came to find her. This made her extremely happy, her eyes sparkling. Yilin, you're here. She wouldn't ask why he was looking for her. If there was nothing, he could look for her. Sun Yilin sized her up. He didn't notice before that her face didn't change much, but her figure had at least 2 shadows. As expected, she had suffered greatly. At this moment, he couldn't bring himself to reprimand her. Pack your things and come stay with me at the Luo residence. It was convenient to find a doctor to take a good look at her. Min Xiaoyuan's eyes brightened even more. Wait for me for a while. Seeing her so happy, Sun Yilin rubbed his temples again. Obviously, things had exceeded his expectations. He had originally planned to leave tomorrow, but now he had to postpone it. At least, he had to wait for her illness to recover before he could set off. The Luo residence had another guest, so naturally, no one had any objections. Old Madame Luo nodded, keeping her opinions to herself. The Luo residence's doctor took Min Xiaoyuan's pulse and looked at the prescription used previously. There were no changes. However, when Min Xiaoyuan found out that Sun Yilin knew that she was sick and allowed her to stay at the Luo residence, she originally thought that he was starting to accept her. Her happy mood dropped a few degrees. Yuan, think about it this way. My 5th brother is also like this because he cares about you. 5th brother is actually very cold. It's not easy to get him to care about you. Sun Yijia smiled. Really? Min Xiaoyuan instantly became happy again. https://www.bicken.com/11/14807/147906557. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 550. Sun Yijia comforted Min Xiaoyuan and saw that she was happy and carefree. To be honest, at this moment, she hoped that she could get what she wanted. However, this matter was not up to them to decide. In the end, it still depended on Sun Yilin's thoughts. In Sun Yijia's opinion, even if there was another person in one's heart, it would not prevent them from getting married. Although it might be a little unfair to Min Xiaoyuan, how many congenial couples could there be in the world? She believed that even if Min Xiaoyuan knew about her brother's situation, she would still be willing. The feeling of liking someone and wanting to be with that person might not be obvious before she married her husband. Although she was moved at that time, it was not very obvious. However, after they got married, their feelings grew stronger day by day. She understood that as long as she was with the person she loved, even if it was just sitting quietly, she would feel happy. Therefore, she believed that even if Min Xiaoyuan's heart was sour, she would still be willing. After they got married, they would become the closest person. After a long time, it might not be impossible for the clouds to part and the moon to see the moon. She was afraid that her brother would be stubborn and would not be willing to get married for the rest of his life. However, Sun Yijia also knew that if her brother really thought it through so easily, perhaps he would not be like this now. Some people looked very transparent and could see everything clearly. However, once it became an obsession, it might be harder to forget and harder to let go than anyone else. Although Min Xiaoyuan was temporarily staying with the Luo family, she basically did not see Sun Yilan. Sun Yilan was deliberately avoiding her. His reason was very clear. Men and women were different. Min Xiaoyuan could not do anything. Moreover, she was in someone else's house. If she did something inappropriate and affected the family's integrity, she would become a sinner. Therefore, she did not insist on looking for Sun Yilan. Instead, she spent more time with Sun Yijia. She wanted to know more about Sun Yilan's past from this sister-in-law. Sun Yijia did not hide anything. She told her a lot of things, big and small. She even bluntly revealed some embarrassing things about Sun Yilan when he was young. Min Xiaoyuan laughed uncontrollably. He has always been a gentleman. Sometimes I even wonder if he deliberately put on a poker face when he was young, like an adult. I didn't expect him to be so naughty. After laughing, she felt a little longing. Why didn't they get to know each other earlier? If only they had known each other earlier. Fifth brother used to play with me when we were young. At that time, I felt that I liked fifth brother the most. However, as I slowly grew older, fifth brother became more and more dull and boring. Sun Yijia talked nonsense without blushing or skipping a beat. She was very restrained by her mother when she was young. She had to learn everything. When she could not walk properly, the rules were already carved into her bones. In the eyes of the elders, she was chaste and virtuous. In the eyes of the other little people, she was the real dull and boring one. Now, she had the nerve to frame everything on her brother. She was just certain that Min Xiaoyuan would not go to her brother to verify it. Besides, even if her brother found out, she did not care. What could he do to her? When it came to her brother, even if she did not have anyone to support her, she was still very confident. She then talked about Sun Yilan's preferences. Compared with those antiques, calligraphy and paintings, fifth brother's favorite is flowers and plants. When he was still in Ding General Manor, his courtyard was full of all kinds of precious flowers and plants. The layout was also very good. It was really beautiful, especially when the 4 famous peonies gathered together. When they bloomed, they were especially beautiful. I could take anything in his courtyard, no matter what it was, but I was not allowed to touch those flowers and plants. I remember one time when I deliberately broke a flower of his, but in the end, he fell out with me and even slapped my palm fiercely despite my begging for mercy. He even slapped me hard. Although she was talking about it casually for Min Xiaoyuan to hear, these things also evoked beautiful memories of Sun Yijia. At that time, she felt that Ding General Manor was beautiful. Now, there was nothing in that place that she was nostalgic about. When Sun Yijia came back to her senses from her memories, she saw that Min Xiaoyuan was a little dazed. She was completely devoid of the joy from before. Puzzled, she asked, "What's wrong with Yuan Yuan?" Min Xiaoyuan looked at Sun Yijia as if she was about to cry. When we were in Jiangnan, I once gave him a pot of clivia. I felt that it was very compatible with him and he would like it. However, he rejected it very clearly. He said that he did not like flowers and plants. At that time, his expression was not fake, and I believed it without a doubt. Sun Yijia frowned slightly. To be honest, she really did not know about this. After all, when she got married, her fifth brother had not encountered any misfortune. In fact, there were still some precious flowers and plants that had not been recorded in her dowry. Her fifth brother had repeatedly reminded her to take good care of them. After that, a lot of things happened. However, Sun Yijia and Sun Yilin had very little contact. She really did not know when he started to dislike the things that he used to like the most. Sun Yijia wondered if it was because of Sister Wan. Sister Wan also liked flowers and plants. Moreover, she was very proficient in this aspect. She always raised better flowers and plants than others. She also knew a lot of methods that others did not know. However, it did not seem right to think this way. As the saying goes, love a house, love its crow. Since he could not let go of it in his heart, he should like the things that they both liked more. It could also be a way to express his lovesickness. Or was it because it was too painful to look at things and think of her, so what the eye did not see, the heart did not grieve over? Maybe he doesn't like it now. People like different things as they age. That's very normal. It's just that after I got married, I rarely saw him, so I don't know. You don't have to take it to heart. Sun Yijia pretended not to care and said, "Is that really the case?" Min Xiaoyuan asked uncertainly. Min Xiaoyuan was just a little more open-minded. She did not like to fuss over many things, but it did not mean that she was stupid. Moreover, she was always particularly sensitive to the people she liked. Therefore, Min Xiaoyuan actually faintly sensed that Sun Yilin might have someone in his heart. It was also because of this that he was still unwilling to accept her. Of course. Sun Yijia nodded very affirmatively. However, she was a little nervous. She felt that this matter must not be known to Min Xiaoyuan. She always felt that if she knew, this stubborn girl who refused to let go might give up. When there was no one in her heart, she could summon up the courage to pursue. However, if the other party was clearly in love with someone else and still refused to give up, then she would really be belittling herself. Everyone had their own pride. As for those who came from aristocratic families, their education philosophy was superior to others. Although it didn't mean that they looked down on ordinary people, it was just that they had stronger pride and self-esteem. Min Xiaoyuan was already at her limit by sticking to Sun Yilin because she liked him too much. However, there were some things that could not be hidden forever. Therefore, Min Xiaoyuan would know about it sooner or later. However, Sun Yijia was clear that it was not now. She would not know from her mouth. It should be when there was room for reconciliation between them, and let that good brother of his tell Min Xiaoyuan personally. At that time, her brother should have also let go. At least, there would no longer be a demon in his heart that would cut off all possibilities in the future. Sun Yijia felt that they should create time and space for them to cultivate their feelings. Obviously, Luo family was not a good place. It was better to let them leave the capital as soon as possible. When the time came, no matter how much they avoided, they would still have a chance to meet. Knowing the reason for Sun Yilin's delay in leaving, she had an idea. Turning around, she sent someone to Jin Wangfu to invite the Jin Wangfu's physician over to take her pulse. She felt a little uncomfortable. When Jingwan found out that Sun Yijia wanted to invite Gong Jiu to the Luo family, she was shocked. She thought that something big had happened. After all, under normal circumstances, no one in the Luo family would invite the Jin Wangfu's physician over. Now, the reputation of the Jin Wangfu's physician was very big. The nobles in the palace had already cured several of them. She did not see them inviting Gong Jiu into the palace just because they had a headache or fever. Therefore, where did the Luo family get such a big face to invite the Jin Wangfu's physician over every few days? Then, Lu Qingdi would definitely be unhappy. However, Jingwan looked at the servant girl who came to invite Gong Jiu. Her expression was calm and there was no trace of panic. This was not an expression that a big matter should have. Therefore, after thinking about it, there should be something else. Jingwan cared about most of the Luo family. Therefore, she wanted to go back and take a look. However, there was still no progress on the mid-autumn assassination. The court was not peaceful. At this time, it was not a good time to go back. Therefore, Jingwan's heart could only be at ease. Letting Gong Zhou make a trip was the same. As long as it was an order from Li Hongyuan or Jingwan, Gong Zhou would naturally obey. Even if he was a beggar, he would not feel strange just because he had treated the emperor's illness. People like them would always treat their master's words as their first priority. If their master wanted to treat, then they would treat. If their master did not want to treat, then they would definitely not treat. When Gong Zhou felt the pulse for Sun Yijia, he was in front of Min Xiaoyuan. Min Xiaoyuan originally wanted to leave, but Sun Yijia stopped her and asked her to sit for a while. Gong Zhou felt the pulse very quickly. Sun Yijia's condition was good, so he did not find anything unusual. However, he still reminded Sun Yijia of some things according to his duty. After he diagnosed Jingwan's pregnancy, Gong Zhou did a lot of work in this aspect. He was about to be promoted to the Master of Gynecology again. Not only Sun Yijia, but also the servant girls and nannies beside her listened carefully. Although she was pregnant for the second time and had experience, she still had to pay attention to what she should pay attention to. Dr. Gong, please take a look at this girl. She just came to the capital city and fell seriously ill on the way. Now she has not recovered fully. It has been a long time. It will be better if she doesn't have any permanent disease. Sun Yijia said so. Gong Zhou understood that this was the real reason why the third young mistress of the Luo family invited him over. He nodded in agreement. Gong Zhou felt the pulse for Min Xiaoyuan. Indeed, it had been a long time. She had not recovered fully and her body was still a little weak. Where is the previous prescription? Let me take a look. Min Xiaoyuan's servant hurriedly went to get it. Gong Zhou took the prescription and looked at it. He crossed out 2 herbs and added 3 more. He also changed the dosage of 2 herbs. One of them was increased and the other was decreased. Then, he wrote a new prescription. Take this prescription. You will be cured by tomorrow. Then, continue to take it for 2 more days. This prescription is for recuperation. You will be fine after taking about 3 prescriptions. The other thing is for food. Gong Zhou briefly mentioned some taboos. Min Xiaoyuan's mammy received the prescription like it was a treasure and thanked Gong Zhou profusely. Gong Zhou's words were indifferent and calm, but few doctors dared to say that it would take a long time to see the effect of the medicine, and it would take a long time to recover from the illness. He didn't think much about it, but others could feel his strong confidence when they heard it. People who came from the prince's mansion were confident because of their strength, not because of their conceit. So, even if he was young, they didn't dare to look down on him. Gong Zhou replied with a few words and returned to the prince's mansion to report to Jingwan. Gong Zhou was no longer a hidden guard. He put all his attention on art and research. Because he had met Min Xiaoyuan in Jiangnan, hidden guards had a special ability to remember people, so he knew Min Xiaoyuan's identity at once. But now, the things outside had nothing to do with him, so he didn't know her relationship with Sun Yilan. He just reported it to Jingwan. Min Xiaoyuan, who should have nothing to do with the Luo family and Sun Yijia, lived in the Luo family. Sun Yijia even made an exception to invite Gong Zhou over. How could Jingwan not feel strange? She could not ignore other people, but since it was related to the Luo family, she could not ignore it. Naturally, she sent people to find out the truth. At this time, Sun Yilan also knew what his sister had done. Facing Sun Yijia, he remained silent. Sun Yijia was furious when she saw him like this. What was worse was that she could not read his emotions at all. Naturally, she could not guess what he was thinking. Fifth brother, we know what you're thinking. There are some things that I can't be bothered to say to you. Anyway, as long as you can think clearly even if I don't say anything. If you can't or don't want to think clearly, then it's useless for me to say anything more. Therefore, you'd better take care of yourself. You can leave the capital in 2 days. It's quite annoying to see you like this. I'm pregnant now and can't see you. So, I don't have to worry about you. Sun Yilan looked at Sun Yijia. After a while, he said softly, "Little sister, there are some things that can't be changed." "Okay, I'll listen to you." I'll leave the capital with Miss Min in 2 days and send her home. Take care of yourself." Without saying anything else, he got up and left. Sun Ijia frowned. She felt that there was a hidden meaning in her fifth brother's words. She felt a little uneasy. Jingwan soon found out what she wanted to know. After a moment of surprise, she was quite happy. Because the information given to her was flat and straightforward and expressed the matter clearly, it led to a point where she could associate the information with the relationship between the characters based on the literal information. Therefore, in Jingwan's eyes, Sun Yilin had finally let go of her and found his true love. Of course, she was happy to see this. Sun Yilin was young and promising. It couldn't be better if he didn't hang on to her. As for her husband, he didn't have to be jealous. It was really good for everyone. Then, Jingwan reflected on her reaction. When she saw him at Ding General Duke's mansion last time, she seemed to have overreacted. He had known Miss Min for a long time and had already let go of her at that time. She thought too highly of herself. When they met again in the future, they could naturally greet each other. However, Jingwan neglected one point. If they really liked each other, why didn't Sun Yilin and Min Xiaoyuan get married? However, even if she thought about it, she probably thought that there must be obstacles because of the gap between their status. Jingwan happily shared the new news with Li Hongyuan. She almost told Li Hongyuan clearly that he didn't have to be jealous in the future. Li Hongyuan smiled, but there was a little unfathomable in the depths of his eyes with a little coldness and indifference. He touched Jingwan's face and thought that his wife was getting more and more silly. "There's another one. Hey, don't make trouble for no reason." Jingwan glared at him unhappily. Chen Zhengmin was now about to be a father. Of course, it was definitely not Li Ruyu who was pregnant. It was one of his concubines who had wanted to climb into his bed in the first branch of the Chen family, Madame Luo's elder brother. Now she finally got what she wanted. In fact, Li Ruyu's situation had not been good. Li Ruyu had lost the title of Commandery Princess, and Commandery Prince Cheng's mansion was getting worse and worse. Chen Zhengmin had already graduated from the Hanlin Academy. Taking advantage of the shortage of people in the Ministry of Revenue, he directly climbed to the 5th rank of the secondary class. Logically speaking, it was not a problem for him to directly divorce Li Ruyu. In fact, it was easy to find a reason, but he didn't. Obviously, Chen Zhengmin was now not as simple as before. Li Ruyu ruined his marriage, so he wanted Li Ruyu to stay in hell for the rest of her life and live a life worse than death. In the end, Chen Zhengmin and Sun Yilin were different. He was the hope of the family, the pillar of the family. He had the mission of carrying on the family line. He could not bear to let the elders sigh all day long and his mother and grandmother wipe their tears from time to time. Furthermore, after he had intimate contact with Li Ruyu, there were some things he no longer had the right to covet. After thinking it through, his body became somewhat unrestrained. He had 3 official concubines as roommates, and the number of Tongfang could not be counted with one hand. However, no matter how his body was, his heart was getting colder and colder. The so-called etiquette could not change his mind at all. After he was done, he directly threw up his hands and left. Not to mention any intimacy, when he left, his clothes were not even messed up, and the clothes of the woman he did it with were also not much messed up. According to their thinking, there was no caressing before. It was simple and crude, and they directly entered the main topic. Not to mention kissing, they did not even hold hands. Regardless of whether it was a concubine or a Tongfang, it was the same. Why were there so many Tongfang? It was because the concubines could not bear his attitude. It was not enjoyment, it was suffering. If they did not want to suffer, they naturally found someone else to replace them. In terms of peace in the backyard, Chen Zhengmin was also ranked at the top. Chen Zhengmin's attitude was just to complete a mission. The way he conducted himself was more and more like a qualified scholar official. If no one deliberately stopped him, then Chen Zhengmin would definitely be a qualified minister in the future. Speaking of these things, how did Jingwan know? Li Hongyuan could isolate the people around him, but could he isolate Madame Luo? Of course, Madame Luo only knew about Chen Jingmin's situation. It had to be said that old Madame Luo was also sighing. This change was really too big. Obviously, Chen Zhengmin had become a scum in Jingwan's eyes. However, it had nothing to do with her. Sometimes, perhaps because of external forces, the original path was forced to change. In fact, it was actually up to oneself to decide how to go on. One had made a choice, so one had to be responsible for one's own choice. If Jingwan still felt guilty because Li Hongyuan schemed against Chen Zhengmin and gave him a wife like Li Ruyu, after listening to Madame Luo's words, the guilt disappeared. She did not pay attention to it at first. At that time, she directly told Madame Luo that Li Ruyu was just a relative of the Luo family, and there was no need to deliberately say anything to her. It was boring. After Chen Zhengmin's incident, Li Hongyuan actually did not care much about him, because he knew best what kind of people his wife particularly disliked. Chen Zhengmin was probably embarrassed to think about Jingwan. Sun Yilin indeed left the capital with Min Xiaoyuan 2 days later. It seemed that he had nothing to do with the people or things in the capital, at least in the short term. But in fact, was it really so? Most of the time, it was really too early to make a conclusion before reaching that step. There was no news about the assassin, and Lu Chengdi's temper became worse and worse. Thinking about it, because he could not find out anything, he was very insecure in the palace now. Not only was Yu Zhongqing, who had not recovered from his injury, punished by Lu Chengdi, but Li Suyen also did not get off easy. It should be known that Li Suyen had never made a mistake before. This time, she was also severely punished, which made people more or less nervous. However, half a month later, Li Hongyuan received news that the people who were watching Sun Yilin had lost him. Yes, together with Min Xiaoyuan, Li Hongyuan's people had completely lost track of him. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/148200944. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 551. Li Hongyuan's expression was unfriendly. Sun Yilin and Min Xiaoyuan were the only ones who had disappeared. Sun Yilin's servant and Min Xiaoyuan's men were still under his control. At this time, he was no longer secretly watching them. He directly interrogated the remaining people. It turned out that when Min Xiaoyuan knew that Sun Yilin was going to send her home, she had a big fight with Sun Yilin. She even said that she had been kicked out of the family and had nothing to do with the Min family. Actually, it was only on the surface. Her parents still loved her. At least, they had never mistreated her in terms of money. Sun Yilin's face darkened for a few days. Min Xiaoyuan seemed to be in a cold war with him, but she never left. Then one morning, he woke up and found that Sun Yilin and Min Xiaoyuan were gone. No one knew where they went. The person in charge of watching them said that they met another group of people on the night of their disappearance. The other group's purpose was very clear. They were trying to delay them and create an opportunity for the other group. Sun Yilin's change was a little unusual. As expected, he should be killed directly. Li Hongyuan looked at the map. The place where Sun Yilin disappeared was a county city that extended in all directions. Therefore, there were many ways to leave, which meant that there were many places to go. Without knowing the identity of the people who helped him behind the scenes, it could be said that it was a very difficult thing to predict his movements. After that, Li Hongyuan directly issued a kill order to his men everywhere. They did not have to look for him deliberately. If they saw him, they were to kill him on the spot. Whoever completed the task would be rewarded handsomely. Li Hongyuan wanted Sun Yilin dead, not only because of Jingwan. In his previous life, he had seen Sun Yilin's talent and knew that Sun Yilin was not an ordinary person. Moreover, Sun Yilan's experience was very different from his previous life. A person who grew up with the flow of the world and a person who grew up with changes could make very different decisions. If Sun Yilan's previous life cared about the world, it was hard to say if Sun Yilan's current life. It was not impossible for Sun Yilan to join the enemy country and destroy Qi Yuan. Even Li Hongyuan himself did not care much about Qi Yuan. Although Sun Yijia was still Sun Yilan's burden, she was not his weakness. He had the ability to help other countries destroy Qi Yuan. Then, it would be a piece of cake for him to protect Sun Yijia and some people in Ding general manner. No one in power would be too stingy with a meritorious person. Sun Yijia was Jingwan's sister-in-law. Li Hongyuan would not do anything to her. Therefore, Sun Yilan was fearless. Sun Yilan knew a little about Li Hongyuan's affairs. When no one knew about it at first, it might be difficult to notice what Li Hongyuan was doing behind the scenes. However, once there was clear news, someone would spend a lot of effort to investigate Li Hongyuan's affairs. Then, a lot of things would come to the surface little by little. Whether it was external or internal, Li Hongyuan would be completely exposed soon. Now, Sun Yilan was very likely to be the person who would reveal the news. Li Hongyuan was expressionless. This day would come sooner or later. Anyway, it was almost time. So what if it was exposed now? What Li Hongyuan could not tolerate the most was that if Sun Yilan really chose such a path, then there was no doubt that one of the benefits involved would be Jingwan. The memory of his previous life was useless for what was going to happen next because many things had changed beyond recognition. However, when Li Hongyuan did things, the memory of his previous life was only a reference. If he relied on it all, how could it be called a change, let alone defying the heavens and changing his fate? Next, he would rely on his own ability to have a good fight. He would let him see if Sun Yilan, the pillar of the country in his previous life, who was known as the youngest cabinet elder and was praised by many people, had the ability to overturn him. It should be known that even without the advantage of being a prophet, Li Hongyuan still had a good hand. After all, he had planned for so long. How could Sun Yilan have all these? Sun Yilan probably relied on his brain. If he wanted to compete with him, he could only rely on the power of other countries. Moreover, in Li Hongyuan's view, it was far from enough if he only borrowed from one country. However, once more than one country was involved, it meant that there would be a struggle for benefits between countries. No one liked to share the delicious fat meat equally. Everyone wanted to monopolize it. It was even more difficult to obtain the right to speak with one's own strength. Whether it was to become a chess piece and be discarded after the end, or to become a chess player, this was a very important matter. Li Hongyuan was inexplicably excited. It could only be said that after his rebirth, although he had to control his temper in all kinds of ways, everything else could be said to be smooth sailing. There were no opponents, so he more or less felt a little lonely at the top. In his previous life, he could make a comeback in such a desperate situation. How could he lose in this life when the overall situation was under control? If he really lost, Li Hongyuan would accept it. At that time, he would just have to take Jingwan to the underworld with him. He could lose anything, and it was not that he could not afford to lose. However, he absolutely could not let go of Jingwan. It was only when it came to Jingwan that he would not lose to anyone. Li Hongyuan estimated that the people below would coincidentally encounter Sun Yilan, and the probability of Sun Yilan being so unlucky as to walk into the knife's edge was very low. Therefore, Li Hongyuan was more likely to wait for Sun Yilan to make a move. Now, he only needed to wait for Sun Yilan to make a move. Jingwan felt that her husband seemed to be a little strange recently. It was as if he was faintly in a state of excitement. Every time she asked, Li Hongyuan would always say that it was nothing. When Jingwan asked anxiously, Li Hongyuan said that some things might be coming to an end. However, more specifically, Li Hongyuan was unwilling to say more. Jingwan only thought that he was preparing to take the initiative to make a move, to end this struggle for the throne in Qiyuan. Even if he didn't ascend to the throne right now, he had to confirm his position as the number one. Jingwan also knew that her current situation was special. Not only could she not be of help, but she might even be a burden. Therefore, she did not ask any more questions. She focused on taking care of her baby in peace and did what a pregnant woman should do. However, after waiting for a long time, it was already October. Her belly was already showing a little. Jingwan did not see any movement from him. He did not seem to be any different from before. Jingwan was puzzled. What exactly was he up to? What he didn't know was that Li Hongyuan was also waiting. It was just that according to the situation reported by his subordinates, there was indeed someone investigating him. However, there were all kinds of signs that seemed to indicate that it was no longer a big deal after reaching a certain point. What the other party wanted was not his specific strength, but a general understanding, or perhaps just a confirmation. Li Hongyuan even waited for someone to report this matter to his good father, the emperor. However, in the end, nothing happened. Even some of his plans and arrangements did not happen. This was really a little puzzling. Or could it be that his guess was wrong? The person who helped Sun Yilin was actually someone in Qiyuan, or even someone who was controlling the overall situation from somewhere in the capital. This possibility was really not big. However, Li Hongyuan still increased his control over the capital. Once again, he conducted a thorough investigation. If someone was plotted against under his nose, then Li Hongyuan could slap himself a few times. After this investigation, he really found some small fish and shrimps. Now, it was obvious that there was no need to keep these small fish and shrimps. They were all found out and directly crushed to death. However, there was still a little accident. There was a very important clue that was broken. It was not someone else, but Yao Rao. At that time, because Prince Kong sent someone to Li Hongyuan, Jingwan directly went to the door. The person who suffered directly was the woman who was the brain of Prince Kong. However, this woman, Yao Rao, should not be underestimated. Her intelligence was outstanding, and she had a good disguise skill. In a situation of certain death, she escaped like a cicada and hid. Li Hongyuan's people found her real body. However, because it was clear that Yao Rao was a spy, and Li Hongyuan knew her identity, he kept her. At the critical moment, she might be able to be used. However, he originally thought that this person had always been under control. This time, he found that he did not know when the person changed. This person was just a person wearing a two-layer mask. An heir knelt down and asked for forgiveness. This was indeed their dereliction of duty. It was fine if the person slipped away, but they did not know when the person slipped away. This could not be forgiven. However, now was not the time to settle the score. Yao Rao was originally a person of southern Qi. Originally, she had both talent and emotion, and she was also born with good looks. She was pursued by many young talents. Such a woman, if nothing unexpected happened, should have had a good future. However, the bad thing was that she was a concubine's daughter of the Marquis. This kind of her was naturally a thorn in the eyes of her official mother and her sisters, an existence that absolutely could not be tolerated. There was no need to think about what would happen next. She was persecuted again. When she was forced into a desperate situation, she had the ability to elope with a young master who was very fond of her. In the end, the other party went back on their word, tangling with a large group of people who saw her as a joke. They ridiculed her, saying that she was a toad who wanted to eat swan meat. Pursuing her was only for fun. After all, other than her birth, everything else was just barely acceptable. She was not worthy of being the official wife. Yao Rao almost died. By chance, she was saved, and the person who saved her was the younger brother of the Emperor of Southern Qi. He was an ambitious man who was eyeing the throne covetously. This prince of Southern Qi was a person who would do anything to achieve his goals. He had trained many spies, and among these spies, the majority were beautiful women. As a man, he knew very well that a beautiful woman could often accomplish things that many men could not easily accomplish. Clearly, the completely black-hearted Yao Rao wanted revenge. She wanted to slaughter all those who had humiliated her and become the leader of these spies. There was one thing that was not quite the same as the others. That was, not only did she want revenge, she also wanted power. She wanted to become a person above others. She wanted to treat those men as playthings. And that ambitious prince also had a treacherous temperament. He promised Yao Rao that after everything was done, he would make her a marquis. When Yao Rao came to Qi Yuan, it was obvious that she held the line of communication with southern Qi. A lot of things depended on her, whether it was sending out information or receiving orders from southern Qi. But Yao Rao was only one of the people of the ambitious prince. Things like going deep into the enemy's country was something that the emperor should do. He had not yet obtained the power. How could he send people to other countries to jump around? In fact, in Li Hongyuan's previous life, he only met her when he attacked southern Qi. She had always shown in southern Qi. She had appeared in front of Li Hongyuan. To put it bluntly, it was a honey trap. However, at that time, Li Hongyuan was at most a beast in human skin. How could she expect him to have protective feelings for the fairer sex? Now, he did not know whether Yao Rao had left Qi Yuan's capital, or if she had changed her identity and continued to hide somewhere else. The capital was so big. If she really hid silently, it would not be easy to find her. However, not easy did not mean that it was impossible, because even if she hid among ordinary people, she was not an ordinary person. And if she wanted to obtain important information, she could not hide in ordinary people's homes. The range of possibilities was narrowed down. He also spent some time to set up tight surveillance. As long as the other party made a move, it was basically impossible to escape. However, because many people had died during this time, it could be considered as beating the grass to scare the snake. The remaining spies would not easily make a move again. However, Li Hongyuan's subordinates did not let down their guard because of this. Just because they did not spread the news did not mean that there was no news coming in. In the end, in just a few days, a clue appeared. However, this clue was very obscure, and for a while, they could not figure out what was going on. Li Hongyuan put the summary of matters on the desk, spread it out, and looked down with his hands behind his back. After half a night of pondering, Li Hongyuan finally grasped the end of the thread, and bit by bit, he found the answer he wanted. The corner of Li Hongyuan's mouth raised into a cold smile. This arrangement is really deep. It's been more than 10 or 20 years. Li Hongyuan did not make a move for the time being. He first asked someone to get a portrait, and then the next night, he went to the Ruan family. Ruan Ruizhong knew that Li Hongyuan would come in person under such circumstances, and it was definitely not a small matter. Ruan Ruizhong was sincerely for the country and the people, but his eyesight was not very good in the past, and he trusted a woman who cuckolded him and was a spy. Fortunately, after the feces on his eyes were wiped clean, he was not affected too much. I wonder if Prince has something important to tell this old official to come in the middle of the night? Ruan Ruizhong stood respectfully. Where is Madame Wei? Li Hongyuan went straight to the point. Madame Wei was naturally the second wife who cuckolded Ruan Ruizhong and had an affair with his son. She was Ruan Fengfei's mother. Madame Wei's methods were good, and she had good martial art skills. However, after some things were exposed, Li Hongyuan still kept her, only crippling her martial arts. He also had Ruan Ruizhong guard her closely. This old official will have someone bring her here. Madame Wei was originally very charming, but now she had been worn out and aged beyond her years. However, this woman's endurance was very good, and she still maintained her sobriety. When she saw Li Hongyuan, her eyes flashed with surprise and fear. But then she laughed. Jin Wangye is very courageous. With the current situation, to dare to enter the Ruan residence at night, it seems that everything is ready. Then I wish Prince success. Her voice was rough and hoarse, without the slightest bit of the original charm. Li Hongyuan looked at her indifferently, obviously not having the desire to speak. Then, an heir directly stepped forward and unfolded the paper in his hand. It was a portrait. No one spoke. Li Hongyuan only paid attention to her expression. His pupils shrunk slightly, but this was enough. It seems that you do know each other. Tell me everything you know, and Ben Wang will give you a quick death. Hearing this, Madame Wei knew that there was no room for her to quibble. When one's life was worse than death, a quick death was an extravagant hope. Madame Wei's heart was obviously struggling. What, Do you still have concerns in your heart? This prince kept you alive because I originally thought that you were the leader of the spies planted in Chiuan, but it turns out that you are just a small pawn. Then, the real leader of your group would definitely know about your situation. Before you were discovered by this prince, you could still be used as a cover. Now, you are just a completely useless pawn. Let me ask you, the people you are worried about, or the people you care about, if they no longer have any value in restricting you, will they be released, or will they be killed? Weisha closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there wasn't the slightest bit of emotion. Jin Wangye, I have to admit that you are indeed very capable. Those brothers of yours have been kept in the dark until now, not knowing who their real opponents are, but it is not entirely their problem. It's just that you can control the Qi Yuan in your hands, but what about the outside? You must know that there is always someone better than you. Are you sure that you will have the last laugh? Whether I can have the last laugh or not, it will naturally be revealed when the time comes. Madame Wei was surprised. She thought that a person like Li Hongyuan who had the power and could play everyone in the palm of his hand, and he was still so young, logically, he should be very conceited. But it was not the case at all. He may not have put some people in his eyes, but he did not underestimate his opponents. He was cautious, serious, and did not become complacent even when he had the advantage. He was obviously just a young man. How did he do it? He became the final winner, so Madame Wei would not find it strange. If such a person lost, it could only be said that he did something that angered the heavens and the people, and the whole world was against him. But the fact was, Ruan Rue Zhong, who was called by the Qi Yuan as the mainstay of the neutral faction, was working for him. Originally, I thought that I had already thought highly of you, but it turned out that I still underestimated you. Now it seems that Feng Fei's taste was very good. She picked someone that others did not think highly of at first glance. Unfortunately, she did not have the slightest good impression of your highness. Perhaps this is my fault as a mother. I did not teach her well. If I taught her like a normal lady, perhaps the result would be completely different. A normal lady wouldn't take a fancy to this prince. That's right. With your highness's reputation, a normal lady would indeed avoid you. Madame Wei seemed a little regretful. Your highness, I can tell you everything that you want to know. In the end, perhaps she was relieved. Madame Wei appeared unprecedentedly calm. Although her voice was unpleasant to hear, she spoke neither quickly nor slowly. She stood naturally, showing the grace of a noble lady. Because it was relatively concise, it only took about 7 or 8 minutes to finish talking. Before Li Hongyuan left with his people, he gave Madame Wei a pill to take. Tomorrow, the Ruan family could hold the funeral for their mistress. After all, Madame Wei had originally used illness as an excuse to recuperate at home. Now that she had passed away, it was not strange. As Li Hongyuan walked, he thought about Madame Wei's words. Decades ago, Southern Qi had the ambition to be like every other country. Their plans had begun at that time. They had sent out a large number of spies. Although most of them had been cleaned up, a small number had taken root. The matter of sending out spies had never stopped. From the very beginning, there were some who had already taken root in other countries for 3 generations. As long as these people were not exposed, no one would believe they were spies. Among the people planted in Qi Yuan, she had originally only held an upper-middle position. But because she had married Ruan Ruiz Hong, and Ruan Ruiz Hong had become a cabinet elder and trusted her greatly, she had easily obtained a lot of information. She had become the head of the intelligence gathering in Qi Yuan. That's right, she was only collecting information. The most important part of the orders from Southern Qi was not in her hands. It was the person that Li Hongyuan had recently unearthed, the Marquis of Chongping. That invisible person in Chongping's manor, who had been set up as a puppet to shield his beloved concubine. Who would have thought that she would be such a person? Li Hongyuan wanted to say that compared to these women, compared to the women in the palace, his wife was like a little white rabbit, harmless, soft, and kind. Digression: the Marquis of Chongping was mentioned in chapter 212. None of the characters mentioned in the previous chapters were useless. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/148646007. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 552. For the time being, Li Hongyuan was still analyzing more things in his mind, not to mention his own wife. The Marquis of Chongping was the second wife of the Marquis of Chongping and was actually a sister of Madame Wei. The two of them were both Madame Wei, and the second wife of the Marquis of Chongping had probably died a long time ago. Their corpses had been tossed to some unknown place. If the person who killed them still had some conscience, perhaps they would have buried them carelessly. If not, then the corpses would probably have been gnawed to the bone by wild dogs. The Marquis of Chongping was once one of the 4 dukes and 9 marquises, originating from the Chui clan. The Chui clan was also a large aristocratic clan and had developed well. However, the Marquis of Chongping's residence had long declined. If not for the Chui clan supporting it from behind, it would probably have been completely destroyed. The current Marquis of Chongping might not be known to outsiders, but the people in the clan knew very well that he was a complete muddlehead. He had no ability and did not improve. He thought that he was infallible. Other than the empty title of Marquis of Chongping, he did not have any real position. Yet, he still blamed the heavens and earth, finding excuses for him to indulge in a life of debauchery. He did not listen to anyone's advice and stubbornly insisted on doing things his own way. He had long disappointed the entire clan and favored his concubines while neglecting his wife, causing the Marquis of Chongping's residence to be in a foul mood. The position of Marquis was bestowed by the great ancestor to the branch of the Chui clan that had helped him the most. Furthermore, it was clearly stated that only the direct descendants could inherit the title. Even the heirs could not inherit it. Otherwise, the Marquis of Chongping would have long been taken away by the other members of the Chui clan. A marquis was still of great use to an aristocratic clan. If it was managed well, it could bring endless benefits. Thus, no matter how useless the Marquis of Chongping was, he could not be allowed to lose his Marquis of Chongping. Of course, from the perspective of the entire clan's interests, this Marquis would either be very capable and could hold up half the sky by himself and lead the entire clan to a better future, or he would be obedient and become a puppet. As long as he was in the hands of his clansmen, he would be neither superior nor inferior. The degree of unlikability of him would be second only to the current Marquis of Chongping. How's the investigation of Marquis Chongping's estate going? Replying to Master, the Chui clan originally wanted to support Marquis Chongping's eldest son to the throne. However, this person has been suppressed too harshly since he was young. Originally, he was somewhat intelligent, but he didn't learn anything that he should learn. Now, he is extremely mediocre. Speaking of which, he does meet the standards of the rest of the Chui clan. However, Marquis Chongping wholeheartedly wanted to give the throne to the second son of his beloved concubine. Master, do you remember that a few years ago, when you were at the Summer Palace, there was a situation at the literary meeting right before you left? Li Hongyuan thought for a while. He still remembered some of it. What's wrong? At that time, Master once said that Marquis Chongping didn't fix the curtains and favored his concubine while neglecting his wife. He replaced his concubine with his wife and wanted Marquis Chongping to be replaced by someone else. However, before they returned to the capital, Marquis Chongping ruthlessly acted, causing his eldest son to have a problem and become a cripple. The only person who could sit on Marquis Chongping's position was the second son. Thus, this matter was left unsettled. Speaking up to here, an heir was somewhat apprehensive. This was because this matter didn't seem to have been reported to Master. It wasn't that he intentionally concealed it and didn't report it. Rather, if Master knew about it, he probably wouldn't intentionally change anything. In addition, he had other matters to attend to, so he accidentally forgot about this matter. However, in the end, it was their negligence. In any case, he was the descendant of one of the country's founding heroes. Marquis Chongping's trivial matter hadn't reached the level of stripping him of his title. In addition, the Chui clan's people had dealt with him in many ways. As a result, the current Marquis Chongping was still that scum. Li Hongyuan indeed didn't have any recollection of this matter. After thinking about it, he more or less understood what had happened. It had been so long, so he couldn't be bothered to look into it. The people by his side knew that they had made mistakes. They also knew in their hearts that there was no need to punish them severely every time. The way of governing should occasionally have a limit to tension and relaxation. Li Hongyuan thought of how the eldest son of Marquis Chongping had violently beaten up the concubine he thought was his biological sister, who had actually replaced his younger brother's position. His words at that time, to him, had unknowingly supported him. However, in reality, it had only caused him to sink deeper into the mire. He had accumulated 10 to 20 years of resentment. At that time, he probably even hated Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan had never cared whether others hated him or not. In any case, the number of people who hated him was already in the sea. However, people who harbored such hatred in their hearts were often able to do things that exceeded expectations. If he was the second wife of Marquis Chongping, then, he would obviously make good use of this person. Carefully investigate the eldest son of Marquis Chongping, including his wife's family, and even the people of the Chui family. The more detailed, the better. Don't let go of any clues. Yes, master. In reality, it was clearly a little too late to investigate now. However, since there was a possibility, he naturally couldn't let it go. It was just like the spies from decades ago, who had even developed into a family. Could it be that because they had already sent out so much information that they couldn't salvage it, they decided to ignore it? What kind of joke was this? As the saying goes, it's never too late to mend the pen after a sheep is lost. When Li Hongyuan returned, Jingwan was awake. However, she didn't make any noise, so the servant girls guarding outside didn't know. Without a familiar scent by her side, she couldn't sleep well. She could only open her eyes in the darkness. When she heard noises outside, she hugged the quilt and sat up. As the curtain of the door was lifted, a faint light followed in. When he got closer, Li Hongyuan could more or less discern Jingwan's state from her breathing. He simply reached out and lifted the cover of the night pearl embedded in the bedside. As expected, he met Jingwan's clear and bright eyes. "Have you been awake for a long time?" Li Hongyuan reached out and touched her hand. It wasn't cold. "Nope." "Ah Yuan, you've been very busy recently." Jingwan simply stated a fact. "I'll try not to go out at night. If I go out, I'll come back as soon as possible. It's not that serious. I'm more sleepy now. In fact, I think that if we sleep separately for a few days, I can be like before. Each of us has a big bed and we can turn around as we want. Anyway, you're busy. Why don't we just sleep separately?" Jingwan suggested quite sincerely. "Wan, do you know what state your husband was in before we got married? Light sleep, easy to wake up, and many dreams. What do you think is the difference between this state and the person who sleeps with you every day?" Li Hongyuan said quite plainly. Jingwan was startled. To be honest, after getting used to this man, she also slept very well. Even if she rarely woke up at night, and when she woke up, he basically woke up with her. However, whether a person slept well at night could be completely reflected by a person's mental state. This man was obviously full of vitality and his body was very good. Was this a state that he couldn't sleep well at night? Wan, if you don't have me, you can get used to it in a few days. However, without you, your husband can't get used to it at all. So, are you sure you want to sleep separately from me? If so, I have no objections. After all, my wife's request is the most important. However, without me by your side, you still have to take it easy. What if you turn around and press on your stomach? It doesn't matter if this little bastard is gone, but if you have a miscarriage, you'll also suffer. Jingwan saw that he went from acting pitiful to another strange style as if nothing had happened. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What nonsense are you talking about? How can you curse your own son like this? You're also so careless when you're acting pitiful. But forget it. We've always been willful and overbearing living kings of hell. It's rare for us to destroy our own image. I'll reluctantly continue to give you half of this bed. Although that was what he said, Jingwan knew very well that he wasn't lying. She couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Li Hongyuan didn't comment. He reached out and put his hand on Jingwan's slightly protruding belly. How do you know it's a son? What if it's a daughter? Didn't you say it's that little bastard? He took advantage of every opportunity to come into this world no matter what. The timing is so accurate. If it's not him, who else could it be? Li Hongyuan said coldly. If it's really him, then it's you who gave him the opportunity. Every time they talked about this, they would quarrel a little. In fact, many times, Jingwan felt that he didn't mean what he said. She despised him in all kinds of ways, but she still hoped that it was that child. Yes, I gave him the opportunity, so now I regret it. I want to strangle him to death. What should I do? The possibility of it not being him is higher. Aren't you implicating the innocent? Jingwan reached out, got up, and directly wrapped her arms around his neck. Li Hongyuan carefully dragged her body. Don't you want to strangle him to death too? Jingwan kissed him on the lips and then stuck close to him. It's very tiring to give birth to a child. If you really do it, then wouldn't I have worked hard for nothing? Ah Yuan, do you have the heart to do that? After saying that, she directly kissed him. The tip of her tongue easily slid open Li Hongyuan's lips and knocked open his teeth. It was the most direct and deepest contact. Although his wife was tempting him because of the unborn little bastard, Li Hongyuan didn't stand on ceremony and accepted it. It had already been the first 3 months, so some taboos had been lifted again. Of course, although the taboos were lifted, the frequency would definitely be greatly reduced, and basically, it would only be done once. This time, the interval was still very long. For the King of Hell, it wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. It was just an appetizer, and it was completely not enough to fill his stomach. Rather than this, he often felt that it was better not to eat. However, the appetizer could at least satisfy his appetite. If he didn't eat, then he would really be completely hungry. So, it was said that it would be a waste not to eat when there was an opportunity. Jingwan also only found out after the taboos were lifted. It seemed that after pregnancy, the body became more sensitive, so it was easier to obtain a sense of pleasure. It was more or less forcing a certain someone to drive fast. Obviously, a certain someone's face was even darker. Therefore, in order to make this man remember less of the unborn baby, Jingwan could only use other methods to serve him. It could be said that everything that she hadn't done before was done. It could be said that it was an unprecedented initiative, and the level of embarrassment was off the charts. However, as the saying goes, the first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar, the third time is familiar, and the third time is familiar, and the third time is nothing. Jingwan persevered and served a certain someone twice tonight, and then directly fell down. She was tired. And a certain someone, who had eaten his fill, hugged Jingwan and kissed her sweaty temples. He asked someone to prepare water, washed up, and then hugged her to sleep. When she woke up the next day, a certain someone was gone again. Jingwan wasn't very surprised. Because the time used for morning exercises in the past was used for sleeping, so when Jingwan got up, it was already quite late. However, after only 3 months, Jingwan's exercise volume was also increasing. Everyone's physical condition was different, so the amount of exercise was definitely different. Jingwan moved as much as possible within her tolerance range, and even occasionally belly danced. Of course, she didn't shake her belly wildly. The people around her were a little frightened, but Jingwan felt good, and there was no discomfort. In this case, in less than 4 months, Jingwan felt the fetal movement for the first time, and it was relatively obvious. Jingwan was surprised at first, and a little nervous, and then she was full of joy. "Nanny, Nanny, the baby is moving in my belly." Jingwan immediately shared with Nanny Gong, who was giving her a massage. Nanny Gong was also surprised, and then carefully reached out to put her hand on Jingwan's belly. Under her palm, she could clearly feel it. Nanny Gong had seen pregnant women before. When Sun Yijia was pregnant, she helped to take care of her, but this was the first time she felt such a close touch. Moreover, Jingwan's baby was definitely different from other people's, so she was happy and nervous, and then hurriedly took Jingwan's pulse. Her pulse showed that everything was fine. Even so, Nanny Gong was still worried, and asked someone to call Gong Jiu over for another diagnosis. Other people who knew about this matter didn't think that Nanny Gong's method was inappropriate. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/148948863. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 553. After Jingwan calmed down, she even put this matter to the back of her mind. When Li Hongyuan came back, she didn't even want to share this matter with him. In the end, it was the people around her who couldn't help but interrupt. Speaking of which, everyone had more or less seen pregnant women, whether it was early or late, but some people never paid attention to it. Li Hongyuan was naturally one of them. So, regardless of whether he liked the child in Jingwan's stomach or not, at this time, he was still a little curious. Just like some silly fathers, he wanted to lie on his wife's stomach and listen to the child's movements. Of course, he wouldn't go to that extent. He couldn't help but reach out and touch Jingwan's stomach carefully. Obviously, he also wanted to feel it, but there was no movement. Unwilling to give up, he touched it again. Other than feeling a slight bulge in her stomach, he didn't feel anything else. Jingwan thought to herself, "Silly baby, your father doesn't like you to begin with. Now that he wants you to make a move, why don't you take the opportunity to please him? If you're really the boy in his memory, you should do something." Then, Jingwan's stomach really moved, and it was quite obvious. Li Hongyuan's eyes flashed with obvious surprise. How should he put it? It felt very strange. There was also a trace of gentleness on his face that he didn't even notice. After all, this was his blood after all. He didn't have a good impression of the child, because before the child was born, Jingwan had to suffer. After the child was born, it would distract Jingwan. As for the inheritance of the bloodline, it was actually an instinct. Jingwan beamed with joy. She felt that her baby and her heart were connected. As for the possibility that it was a coincidence, she didn't want to admit it. However, her smile didn't last long. After seeing her expression, the gentleness on Li Hongyuan's face disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never appeared. Jingwan naturally didn't find it funny. She sighed in her heart. Nothing could last more than 3 seconds. Wan is that happy? Although he did not like the little bastard in her belly, if she was really happy, it was not impossible for him to endure it. A good mood was also very important for a pregnant woman. These debts could be placed on the little bastard's head. After the baby was born, he could slowly settle the score. Wasn't it natural for a father to take care of his son? He didn't find anything wrong with going against Lu Qingdi. The double standards were too obvious. Jingwan didn't hide her good mood because this man's tolerance towards her was still increasing. He said that he would record every debt in a small notebook, but in reality, how could he really settle the debt with her in the future? The so-called settling of debts was just some shameful things, and under normal circumstances, it wasn't uncommon. Moreover, no matter how ruthless he was, it was just like that. At most, he would be a little exhausted, and he would be fine after some rest. It wasn't a big deal. Sure enough, after she nodded, Li Hongyuan didn't say much. In the following 2 days, Li Hongyuan stayed in the residence as if he had nothing better to do. He accompanied Jingwan to take care of the flowers and plants. Under normal circumstances, in this short period of time, Marquis Chongping's wife wouldn't know that something had happened to Madame Wei. However, there were always accidents. For example, if something happened and she suddenly contacted, then she would definitely find out that something was wrong. Taking advantage of this time difference, then Li Hongyuan should be able to take advantage of this opportunity to wipe out all those people. Of course, even if there wasn't this time difference, it didn't matter. As long as he took down the leader, then the small fish and shrimps below were nothing to be afraid of. They would just spread the news about Li Hongyuan's situation. In reality, Li Hongyuan didn't think that his true situation was as secretive as before. In these 2 days, his subordinates investigated the situation of Marquis Chongping's eldest son. Just as Li Hongyuan had predicted, this person had already been taken in by the Marquis of Chongping's wife. From his actions, it could be seen that he was truly filled with hatred. Towards the Marquis of Chongping, towards everyone else in the Marquis of Chongping's household, towards the Chui clan, because it did not involve Li Hongyuan, his attitude towards Li Hongyuan could not be seen. However, to collude with the enemy and betray the country, he did it without hesitation. From this, it could be seen that he no longer had the slightest bit of attachment to the entire Qiyuan. Although this person looked like a cripple, but in any case, his surname was Chui. Although there was no possibility of him taking the position of Marquis Chongping, he was still a good method for the Chui clan to control Marquis Chongping. As long as he cooperated with the Chui clan to prove that Marquis Chongping was unkind as a father, Marquis Chongping would compromise if he wanted to keep his title. In this way, the other clansmen of the Chui clan, even if they were pretending, would appropriately show goodwill towards this eldest son of Marquis Chongping. And once they had a target, this person wouldn't be as mediocre and incompetent as he looked. This caused the clansmen of the Chui clan to feel pity for him. Gradually, the relationship between the two sides became closer. He would always be able to obtain some useful information. When the bits and pieces were gathered, they definitely couldn't be underestimated. According to the situation, if there were no accidents, Yao Rao should be by this person's side. Who knew how long it had been? With such a woman around, the information obtained would at least double. Close the net. Li Hongyuan gave these 2 words and didn't ask any more questions. He only left the city that night and went to the manor. This was the first time Li Hongyuan met Marquis Chongping's wife. No matter what, this woman looked calm and serene. She didn't seem like a prisoner at all. She ate vegetarian and recited Buddhist scriptures in the Marquis's residence all year round. It seemed that she had really distanced herself from the secular world and was tainted with a Buddhist nature. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/1489484 HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon.com mobile version reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 554. Li Hongyuan only exchanged a glance with the Marquis of Chongping's second madam. He looked at her expressionlessly for a moment, then left without saying a word. From the Marquis of Chongping's second madam's attitude, it could be seen that before Li Hongyuan arrived, Li Hongyuan's subordinates did not interrogate her. Obviously, the King of Hell was going to interrogate her personally, but after seeing her, he changed his mind. Interrogate her. If you can get anything out of her, then interrogate her. If you can't, then deal with her. Obviously, Li Hongyuan knew this kind of woman very well. She would either tell him everything, or she wouldn't say anything, no matter what cruel methods were used. Women were weak and needed to rely on men to survive. However, some women could be stronger and more determined than men, more ruthless than men, and could also play with men in the palm of their hands and use them as a stepping stone to climb up the social ladder. This kind of woman could appear on the surface, but she could also hide in the depths. Obviously, Li Hongyuan classified the Marquis of Chongping's second madam into this category. On the surface, the Marquis of Chongping's second madam was a puppet in the inner court. Due to illness, she didn't leave the house all year round, and she ate vegetarian and prayed to Buddha. She had been in the Marquis of Chongping's household for 10 to 20 years, but she had never seen Li Hongyuan, at least not in close proximity. Even so, she was able to confirm Li Hongyuan's identity as soon as she saw him. Firstly, as the leader of the spies behind the scenes, she knew too many things that others didn't know about. Secondly, the King of Hell was too recognizable. Astonishment flashed across the Marquis of Chongping's second madam's eyes, but she seemed to accept this reality in the blink of an eye. She even lightly sighed with a hint of a smile, as if she felt that her loss wasn't unjust. Thinking about it, when she first began to infiltrate the Qi Yuan in the capital, Li Hongyuan was just a child. According to the timeline, he hadn't even been reborn yet. He didn't know that there were so many spies in the capital, yet he was still able to quietly develop his power, avoiding his own people and those eyes. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly. The people around Li Hongyuan were used to his temperament, so to a certain extent, it was normal for them to not have any suspicions. However, as a spy, she had many subordinates and monitored the entire capital, yet she still couldn't clean up them. This was enough to show how powerful the King of Hell was. Therefore, for her to end up in this situation, she didn't feel any resentment, and was able to accept it well. However, from this, it could be seen that this second madam was different from Madame Wei. She was a spy, but she did things indifferently and calmly, as if she was eating and drinking normally. No matter if she failed or succeeded, or even when she dealt with those who didn't do their jobs well, she was still so calm. She had the same background as Madame Wei, and Madame Wei could mess around, but he still maintained his virginity. It must be said that with her ability, it would be too easy for her to have an affair behind the Marquis of Chongping's back, but she didn't. She also didn't have any special hobbies, and seemed to have a good attitude. To be honest, to be able to do this, it was a little scary. This was probably the reason why Li Hongyuan wanted to personally interrogate this information, but after seeing it, it seemed to be beyond his expectations, so he decisively gave up. The second madam of Chongping looked in the direction Li Hongyuan left for a long time. As expected, there are new talents in every generation. She sighed softly, then smiled. However, until the last piece is played, who can be sure of who will win or lose? Perhaps, at the crucial moment, he will fall into the hands of an inconspicuous person or someone he trusts the most. Who knows? The second madam of Chongping looked at the sky outside. In fact, from her position, the scenery outside was very beautiful. Hearing the approaching footsteps outside, the second madam of Chongping closed her eyes with some regret. And this regret seemed to stem from the fact that she wouldn't be able to enjoy such beautiful scenery in the future. Slowly, the second madam of Chongping's breathing became lighter and lighter, until it disappeared. However, her sitting posture remained unchanged, and her expression didn't change either. It was as if she was trying to fall asleep. So, when Li Hongyuan's men came in and got close, they discovered that the second madam of Chongping was already dead. This was more or less unexpected because Gong Jiu was also involved in this operation. First, he confirmed that the second madam of Chongping's mouth wasn't poisoned, nor was she poisoned. But now she was dead. So, he immediately reported to Li Hongyuan. Soon after, Gong Jiu rushed over. With his current medical skills, it was rare for him to make a mistake. Of course, he couldn't guarantee that his diagnosis was 100% accurate, so he needed to confirm the cause of death of the second madam of Chongping. As the saying goes, the dead should be respected, but there was no respect for a spy. So, when Gong Jiu couldn't determine the cause of death from the second madam of Chongping's appearance, he directly stripped her naked, then used a knife to dissect her. To be honest, after Jing Wan explained the suturing of external wounds, she jokingly mentioned dissecting her stomach. Gong Jiu took note of it and was already putting it into practice. Not to mention dissecting a dead person, even if it was a living body, he could get quite a few. Now, he was very familiar with human organs. Digression, https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/149639330. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon.com Mobile Edition website: bicon.com. Chapter 555. Because he knew a lot about the dead and the living, as well as how they died, how long they had been dead, and what kind of state they would be in, even if he didn't know everything. However, Marquis Chomping's second wife was not within his scope of understanding. She was clearly a dead person, but after cutting open her corpse, she was just like a living person. Every cut was like a cut on a living person's body, regardless of whether it was the speed of bleeding or the shape of the wound. One must know that there was no heartbeat or pulse. How did she end up in such a state? No matter how one looked at it, it left one wondering. Even his usual coffin face could not help but frown at this moment. Of course, Gong Jiu's psychological endurance was also rather strong. He did not believe that common sense did not exist. It only meant that he did not understand this aspect. His goal was to find out the cause of death of the Marquis Chomping's second wife, because dying in such an inexplicable manner was the most frightening part. However, Gong Jiu still could not find the cause. Even after cutting open the flesh of the four limbs, the bones were basically all cracked open, and even the head was completely open. Under normal circumstances, this kind of silent death should be caused by some kind of poison. However, Gong Jiu used all the methods he could think of to check, and it showed no abnormalities. It was as if a healthy person had suddenly stopped breathing. There was no disease, injury, or poison. It was an inexplicable death. Gong Jiu made the scene rather gory and terrifying, so much so that when others came to inquire and saw the scene, even if they were used to seeing all kinds of corpses and had experienced all kinds of situations, they still felt a little horrified. The gaze they used to look at Gong Jiu with, even though they were once good brothers, now carried an inexplicable trace of reverence. Especially when Gong Jiu faced the dismembered corpse with an expressionless face. It was as if compared to normal people, they were not very normal, but compared to him, they were as normal as they could be. Was this a kind of consolation? In reality, from Gong Jiu's point of view, this scene was nothing much. To a certain extent, Gong Jiu was actually a little fussy and pursued perfection. From the very beginning, perhaps it really was a mess, but now, whether it was the cut or the things taken from the corpse, they could all be said to be orderly. It was only because the death was abnormal that there was a little more blood. An heir led two people forward, doing his best to ignore the scene, and his attention fell on Gong Jiu. "How is it?" Gong Jiu didn't respond. He lowered his head and looked at every inch of the room, trying to see if he had overlooked anything. This continued until Gong Jiu's gaze inadvertently landed on the brain that was spread open like a piece of paper. There seemed to be a slight change in it, but it also seemed like nothing had happened. A thought suddenly appeared in Gong Jiu's mind, but it disappeared as quickly as it appeared. He couldn't find the source, but he did find the most important thing. "Quick, go get some incense ashes." The three of them looked at each other in dismay. Where would they get the incense ash in this manor? He didn't burn any incense at all. The manor next door has incense. If you don't have any, just burn it. "I don't need too much," Gong Jiu said coldly. Clearly, Gong Jiu was the boss now. Because he wasn't sure if the Marquis of Chomping's second wife was dangerous, Gong Jiu wore special gloves from the very beginning. Because of these gloves, he wouldn't be affected when he came into contact with poison at any time. At this moment, he stretched out his hand and pushed in bit by bit from the edge of the thin paper, following the place where he felt the change had occurred. Because he couldn't see it, he could only rely on his senses and stop at a certain place. He felt something different. It was very subtle and could be overlooked if he didn't pay attention. Gong Zhou paused and even wanted to take off the gloves on his hand. Even if the gloves were very thin, it couldn't compare to the subtle feeling he could feel from his own skin. However, he didn't do so in the end. He relaxed his strength and was very gentle, wanting to swipe across the thing to see its shape. However, he didn't succeed. At this moment, Gong Zhou only felt that there was something under his fingers. Because it felt his existence, it was changing its shape according to his movements, allowing the thin paper to maintain its proper shape. Perhaps because he found the source, Gong Zhou wasn't in a hurry. He was very patient and relied on a very subtle feeling to confirm that the thing hadn't slipped away from his hands. That was enough. An heir and the others moved quickly enough and didn't make Gong Zhou wait for too long. Gong Zhou's other hand picked up a small pinch of incense ash and sprinkled it under the fingers of his other hand. Then, a certain thing revealed its true appearance. It was a worm. It was originally stuck to the brain, but because it was stained with the incense ash, it actually slowly swelled up. It was a fat worm that was half the length of a person. Gong Zhou picked it up. It was soft, but compared to before, the texture was very obvious. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/151398873 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 556. Gong Zhou had only heard of such things by chance and had never come into contact with them. In reality, even if he did come into contact with them, it would be rather difficult, perhaps even impossible. He had only heard that their uses were unpredictable, their numbers were few, and it was not easy to raise them. They were something unique to a tribe called the Wani tribe, and their numbers were few. Because they did not marry into other tribes, their population had always been a big problem. To be able to maintain a population of over 1,000 people was already not easy. But even if their numbers were few, outsiders did not easily provoke them because of these Wani. And this Wani tribe was within the borders of southern Qi. As a superior, generally speaking, they would not allow such things that were difficult to control to exist. However, the location of the Wani tribe was unknown to outsiders. Just based on what little knowledge they had, there were all kinds of poisonous insects, snakes, and ants on the outskirts of the Wani tribe. Miasma overflowed everywhere, and it was basically unheard of to enter and then leave unscathed. So, even if Gong Zhou was interested in such an existence, in the end, he would let it go. Now, he had actually come into contact with such a thing, even though Gong Zhou was not certain that this thing was a Wani. Then, Gong Zhou took out a box from his medicine chest and put the Wani inside. Looking at the lid of the box, his eyes were obscure and unclear. Then, Gong Zhou took the box to see Li Hongyuan. At this moment, Li Hongyuan was sitting in front of the enchanting woman. The enchanting woman's disguise was rather brilliant, but now she was slightly miserable. Because a layer of human skin mask had been torn off her face. Each layer was a different face. Logically speaking, for such a proud and conceited woman who believed her beauty to be unparalleled in the world, every face should be beautiful. However, this was not the case. Not only were there unremarkable faces, there were even old women. It was enough to show that she was not an ordinary person who could bend and stretch. Yao Rao was different from the second wife of the Marquis of Chongping. Perhaps she had been viciously hurt by a man before, so on the surface, she was unbearably debauched. However, on the inside, she actually treated men as playthings. She wanted to play with all the men in the palms of her hands, trample them under her feet, and make them become subjects under her skirt. What she enjoyed was the process of conquering them. She was different from Wei Shi of the Ruan Manor. After all, what she wanted was pure carnal desire. Therefore, when the second wife of the Marquis of Chongping saw Li Hongyuan, she could still smile peacefully and sigh. Seductive was all kinds of debauchery. It was truly seductive to the extreme. After all, when she first saw Li Hongyuan when she entered the capital, she had already developed feelings for him. In a situation like this, it usually wouldn't end well. However, if she could seduce him, there was still a chance of survival. However, it was clear that this method was completely useless in front of Li Hongyuan. As for the reason why he was still here, to a certain extent, it could be said that his mood wasn't too good. It was obvious that Sun Yilin didn't act according to his expectations. If it wasn't related to Jing Wan, perhaps he would still be very patient. Clearly, because it was related to Jing Wan, it was inevitable that his mood would be a little irritable. He had to find a place to vent. However, because Jing Wan was pregnant, Li Hongyuan didn't want her to worry. Therefore, he did his best to suppress his temper and not let it explode. Because once he completely vented, it would inevitably leave traces. As such, not to mention Yao Rao, even the people around him didn't notice his mood. However, the people around him, based on their experience or intuition, felt that something was wrong. They all tucked their tails between their legs and carefully buried their heads in their work. Only Yao Rao was doing her best to court disaster. Not to mention the teasing words, being tied up, the movements of her limbs were not small. On the contrary, because of the rope, some places were even more obvious, appearing particularly seductive. However, Yao Rao was singing her one-man show energetically. However, the men present, not to mention the main character, the others also didn't bat an eyelid. After a long time, wouldn't it be awkward? Yao Rao was so angry that she even suspected that these men couldn't do it. Of course, there was also a faint fear in her heart. The more it was like this, the more likely it was for her to survive. She didn't want to die, not only because of her supreme ambition, but also because of her unavenged hatred. Because of a series of unforeseen events, it was clear who the initiator was. Yao Rao naturally couldn't treat Li Hongyuan as a flower vase. This man had deceived everyone. In fact, this kind of man made Yao Rao want to conquer him even more. Therefore, even if she knew that there would be a bad ending, she couldn't help but be excited. Everyone says that Jin Qin Wang has been through thousands of flowers. Could it be false? Yao Rao's gaze fell on a certain place on Li Hongyuan's body. She licked her lips. Her eyes were like a seductive hook. Li Hongyuan was originally just sitting quietly with his legs crossed and his hands naturally placed on his lap. Suddenly, he changed his sitting posture. Leaning forward slightly, he raised his hand and ran his fingertips over his eyebrows. "Go, take off that face. Ben Wang wants to see if there is a human skin mask underneath." Yao Rao's true appearance, Li Hongyuan naturally had seen it before. Even if it was a long time ago, when he saw it again, there would always be some impression. A person beside Li Hongyuan answered and calmly stepped forward. He reached out and traced a circle around Yao Rao's entire face. His fingers were a bit cold, making Yao Rao shiver for no reason and shrink back. "Jin Qin Wang Yi, it's not like you haven't seen Nujia before. Whether this face is real or not, you still don't know. You should also believe that the person beside you isn't." And the person in front of her took out a small knife and suddenly smiled. "Whether there is more inside or not, take off this face and you will know." Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/15807/1513987 HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 557. And the person in front of her took out a small knife, then suddenly smiled. Whether there's more inside or not, you'll know once you take off this face. As a shadow guard, if he didn't smile for a long time, then his fake facial paralysis would become real facial paralysis. So when he suddenly smiled, wouldn't that be especially terrifying? However, what really made Yao Rao afraid was the content of those words. As a woman whose face was the most important weapon, Yao Rao had always maintained her beauty. Don't look at how she didn't care about those human skin masks. Even if they were ordinary or even ugly, they were only needed to conceal her identity. So, to some extent, her face was more important than her life. Looking at the current situation, he wanted to peel off her face? How could Yao Rao still care about seducing people? Don't, let me go. She fiercely struggled, but because she was tied up, the so-called struggle was merely shaking her head left and right, trying to get rid of that hand. Yao Rao was released as she wished, but the next moment, an ice-cold knife fell on her face. This time, Yao Rao didn't dare to move again. Her eyes stared down at that knife. Just by looking at it, she knew that it was incomparably sharp. She feared that if she moved, her beautiful face would be cut. Soon after, she coldly looked at the person in front of her, as if she wanted to eat that person. However, this was merely a dangerous look in her eyes, so what was the use of it? Shwa, the side of Yao Rao's face was cut by that knife. It wasn't deep, probably just enough to break her skin, slowly forming a line of blood. The slight stinging pain even made Yao Rao dazed for a split second. Soon after, she let out a mournful shriek. She was caught off guard, and the closer she got, the stronger the attack she received was. The facial paralysis standing in front of her instantly cracked, and resisted the action of rubbing his ears. But before he could take any further action, Yao Rao cursed loudly, "Disgraceful thing, you actually dare to injure my face, you actually dare to." The shadow guard expressionlessly brushed his hand twice, using his action to tell her that there was nothing he didn't dare to do. Yao Rao seemed as if she was about to collapse, shouting and screaming. She completely didn't care about the image she usually maintained. Since it didn't work, she changed the target. "Li Hongyuan, are you a man or not? How could you do such a thing? Even the women in the inner courtyard are rarely like you." The air seemed to stagnate. Li Hongyuan's subordinates looked at Yao Rao with a bit of admiration. This was the first time they had seen such a courageous person. However, their master was not a person who was easily provoked. Whether your words had any effect or not, many times, it depended on his mood. Li Hongyuan was originally sitting leisurely, his head lowered as he fiddled with the jade thumb ring on his hand. At this moment he raised his head. "Noisy, and Wu, take off the skin and then slice off the meat. In any case, in this manner, no amount of meat will go to waste." Li Hongyuan's voice seemed to be lower than before, a bit deeper. Hearing this, the people around him couldn't help but have their hair stand on end. They thought, Master was indeed not right during this period of time. Right now, it was only becoming more and more obvious. This also meant that it could possibly explode at any time. That kind of master was absolutely dangerous. Yao Rao still wanted to say something, but in the next moment, An Wu slashed horizontally. The two sides of her mouth, extending to her cheeks, were all cut open. If she opened her mouth, it would probably become a real bloody mouth. Yao Rao's pupils rapidly contracted. However, she also couldn't say anything because her neck was firmly gripped. An Wu thought, his skinning technique was actually very good. A thin layer could be completely intact without the slightest bit of opening. After that, the recovery was actually quite fast. TSK, why couldn't she be obedient? A rope was inserted horizontally into Yao Rao's mouth, strangling to the deepest part of the wound. Soon after, Yao Rao's head was fixed to the wooden stake behind her. In this way, if she still had the courage to shake her head, An Wu actually didn't mind a bit of trouble when he made his move. In any case, this face was already damaged. It didn't matter if there was more meat on the skin. To him, although it was a failure, it also didn't matter. It was just a practice for him to practice. No matter how beautiful a woman was, this kind of appearance couldn't make her beautiful. Normal people wouldn't look at it. Those who were timid would probably pee and then go to the side and vomit until the sky turned dark. At this moment, Yao Rao also didn't have any thoughts. The rope was embedded into her flesh, and the middle position reached the root of her tongue. Not only was it painful, it was also very, very uncomfortable. Her mouth made woo-woo-woo sounds, but she didn't dare to move. Yao Rao's hatred overflowed to the heavens. In her opinion, Li Hongyuan really wasn't a man. Could a man be like him? At the same time, she was also a bit regretful. If she had known it would be like this, why would she have done so many things? Unfortunately, Gong Zhou came in from the outside. He could hardly hear the sound of footsteps. He slightly leaned forward. "Master, there's a discovery." "Speak." Gong Zhou methodically explained the previous matter. Li Hongyuan stretched out his hand. Gong Zhou put the box in his hand. Li Hongyuan opened it. A fat worm, but it looked like it was dead. It didn't move at all. It was reasonable to say that the incense ash was sprinkled on the worm's body. But now, the worm had turned gray, and it was very uniform. There was no trace of the incense ash on the worm's face. Reasonable to say, the inside of the worm was also quite clean. It was as if the incense ash was completely absorbed into the worm's body. So, it's this worm that made people die inexplicably, and after death, it's still like a living person? Replying to Master, this subordinate is just guessing. There were some things that Gong Zhou obviously needed to confirm. Li Hongyuan raised his head and looked at Gong Zhou. He closed the box and threw it to Gong Zhou. "There's a ready-made one here. Directly cut open her head and take a look. A living person and a dead person should be different. Gong Zhou, after the worm is taken out, it's best to make sure she's alive." This subordinate will try his best. Everything that Gong Zhou said just now, everyone present had heard it clearly. Yao Rao's eyes suddenly widened. Her eyes were filled with unconcealable fear. Her head was cut open while she was still alive. That scene, just thinking about it, made people frightened. Yao Rao didn't even care about the pain. She shook her head. When Li Hongyuan ordered, and Wu had already stopped his actions. And the skin on Yao Rao's face was peeled off. Following her movements, the skin swayed on her face. That scene was really... However, it didn't have any effect on them. "Master, just in case, shouldn't we interrogate her first?" An heir suggested, with some cautiousness. Facing a master whose mood wasn't right, they were actually tired enough. Not to mention other things, they couldn't even show their cautiousness. If they couldn't, who knows where they would touch his nerve. At that time, they didn't know how they would be unlucky. Although, as long as they didn't do things like betrayal, their little lives wouldn't be in danger. However, if they could live well, they reckoned that no one would be willing to cause trouble for themselves. They weren't masochists. Li Hongyuan nodded his head indifferently. Then, he leisurely got up and left. From beginning to end, they didn't quite understand the meaning of him sitting here. However, he was the master. What he wanted to do was his own business. Others couldn't interfere. "Gong Zhou, first come with this prince." Outside, Li Hongyuan stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the sky. "How much do you know about goo worms?" Not to mention other things, just the effect of this worm made people have no choice but to be on guard. Gong Zhou simply said what he knew. Li Hongyuan turned back and looked at him with particularly calm eyes. It seemed that there was something condensed in the depths of his eyes. "This is all you know? A very general outline?" Li Hongyuan's gaze fell on his hand. It seemed that he only knew about this thing. How did he know the method to control this thing in his hand? He also knew how to keep it and happened to have a suitable box. Gong Zhou obviously also understood that there was something wrong. However, he really only knew that. Even if he deliberately dug up his memory, it was still the same. Previously, it seemed that after meeting the little thing in his hand, he naturally knew how to deal with it. Gong Zhou was very sure that he didn't have any memory loss. He could completely connect it, and there was nothing wrong with it. In reply to Master, this subordinate indeed only knows this. Gong Zhou slightly bowed his head and replied, "Don't suspect the people you use." This principle didn't apply to Li Hongyuan. It was said that he didn't trust his subordinates, but he didn't hesitate to instruct many things. However, it was also a joke to say that he trusted his subordinates very much. Under normal circumstances, Gong Zhou's situation would make his master suspicious. Li Hongyuan didn't express anything at all. He just waved his hand. Gong Zhou's brows furrowed slightly. Although he was used to Li Hongyuan's style, he still felt a little uneasy. He couldn't tell what he was thinking, but he didn't explain himself. He respectfully replied and left. Li Hongyuan casually picked up a leaf. There were indeed many things that had changed. At least in his previous life, he had never heard of such a thing. Of course, the possibility that he just didn't discover it was more likely. Otherwise, he would have made preparations for it in this life. However, there was one thing that Li Hongyuan was certain of. This thing sounded mysterious, but it was still not possible to use it silently. There should be a lot of limitations. Southern Qi had begun sending spies to other countries decades ago. This point definitely wouldn't change because of his rebirth. In his previous life, he believed that in the early stages, no one had thought highly of him. In the end, he had seized the Qi Yuan Empire. It was 100% certain that he had interfered with some people's plans. Those people had no reason to let him go so easily. Whether it was in the palace or on the battlefield, he was different from other emperors. It was probably that there were fewer people, and even fewer people who could come into contact with his body. Therefore, this insect needed to be in close contact, and it wasn't likely to be silent. There would always be some signs. In addition, this thing was difficult to raise, which meant that it was rare. As for how rare it was, perhaps it could be verified by looking at Yaorao. If there were a lot of them, these spies should all have them. Gong Zhou prepared to go take a look at the body of Marquis Chongping's second wife. Without the insect, there should be some changes. However, halfway there, Gong Zhou was stopped. Because of Yaorao's super big mouth, her words leaked out, and many words couldn't be heard clearly. In a situation where there was no other way, she really couldn't bear it. She was just a spy from another country, so Gong Zhou naturally didn't have the kindness to disinfect or anesthetize her. Rather simply and crudely, he directly sewed up Yaorao's face. When Yaorao cried out in pain, he unceremoniously used a silver needle to shut her up. Everyone else watched silently, and then looked again at the swaying silver needle. Obviously, he could have used it to stop the pain in another place. Sure enough, Gong Zhou was a blockhead who didn't know how to be tender and protective of the fairer sex. But he forgot that he also didn't know how to be tender and protective of the fairer sex. For example, when Shadow 5 made his move, did he hesitate for even a breath? After it was done, Yaorao seemed to only have one breath left. The interrogation continued, but Yaorao was not as happy as before. She knew very well that even if she told everything, she wouldn't have a good end. As a shadow guard, it was basic for him to observe people's expressions. It was difficult for him not to know what Yaorao was thinking. If you tell me quickly, can you die quickly? Or do you really want to have your head cut open while you're still alive? I don't have a goo in my body, Yaorao said rather emotionally. Clearly, Yaorao at least knew about this thing. Whether she had it or not was hard to say because Yaorao still had the desire to live. It was difficult to say whether the goo was controlled by her or by him. The interrogation afterwards could be considered to be smooth. Looking at Yaorao, it seemed she was indeed asking for a quick death, as if she could prove that she didn't have any goo worm in her body. However, who could be sure whether she was deliberately doing this in order to leave them false information? Yaorao was, in the end, someone who had undergone special training. She might not be able to tell a lie that was 70% true and 30% false. However, Li Hongyuan's doubts were resolved in the end. Marquis Chongping's second wife and Ruan Ruizhong's second wife, Wei Shi, had clearly entered Qi Yuan many years ago. At that time, Southern Qi still wasn't the current emperor. According to Wei Shi, spies were sent out by those in power, and Yao Rao's target of service was an ambitious prince of southern Qi. These two groups of people should clearly be from different walks of life, yet they were mixed together. Thus, one side must have betrayed their master. Was it Ma Qi Chongping's second wife and Wei Shi? The possibility was very small. Yao Rao did indeed say that she had sought refuge with the crown prince of southern Qi. She had come to Qi Yuan because the crown prince of southern Qi had arranged for her to persuade the prince she was publicly loyal to. With this point, then what caused Yao Rao to betray her master in her previous life, but in this life? Li Hongyuan twirled the leaves. The juice dyed his fingertips green. He had made many arrangements in southern Qi. Bit by bit, he had messed up the situation in southern Qi. Perhaps something had happened here that caused the enchanting Rao to betray her master. Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes slightly. If Sun Yilin had really betrayed his country, then did he seek refuge with southern Qi or the former Wei? Other than these two, there was no third choice. Since Sun Yilin hadn't moved, then he didn't mind luring the snake out of its hole. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/151645664. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.